like to call this meeting of the Anchorage Assembly to order. Madam Clerk, would you kindly call the roll?
Assemblymember Starr.
Here.
Assemblymember Peterson.
Here.
Assemblymember Domboski.
Present.
Assemblymember Gray Jackson.
Honored to be here.
Chair Flynn. Present. Vice Chair Trainee.
Here.
Assemblymember Evans.
Here.
Assemblymember Johnston.
Here.
Assemblymember Honeman.
Here.
Assemblymember Hall.
Here.
And Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
How about me?
Oh, sorry.
I'm here.
Assemblymember Steele.
I thought you were just putting me as an afterthought for some reason.
We have a quorum with or without you.
Good point.
Ms. Gray Jackson, would you kindly lead us in the pledge? Mr. Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hope everyone had a fabulous 4th of July weekend. Weather cooperated for the most part, and had the opportunity to participate in the 4th of July fair here, or 4th of July parade here in Anchorage. And kudos go out to Darrell Schaff and his group at Art Services North. They had the whole park strip set up with many, many activities, and our Centennial booth did very, very well. Got great exposure there. And then the next day, I was able to ride with Ms. Johnston in the Girdwood Forest Fair Parade, and saw Chairman Flynn and in the attendance as well. So a lot going on in our community over the weekend. And that's it for today.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few items for the chair's report. I've asked the clerk's office to inquire as to the availability of chambers for Wednesday, January 23rd. I'd appreciate members marking their calendar. We have a very full agenda on the 22nd. So if we don't get done, I'm going to ask that we just continue the meeting to the following evening. So please get that onto your calendars. Also, in your agenda, I know many of you have had some contact with folks regarding the Harry McDonald Center ice rink replacement. I've asked Vice Chair Trainee to pull the two items related to that so we can hear from the appellant before we make a decision on that tonight. And other than that, I'm going to move into committee reports and start with Mr. Starr, please.
No report.
Thank you, Mr. Starr. Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No report this evening.
Ms. Domboski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, first I'd like to give an update on the Eberhardt matter. Yesterday, I did sign the order laying out the process, and the clerk has distributed it to both parties. Essentially, right now, we are in the discovery phase, of which both parties have begun to submit their witness lists. Our hearing is still set for September 10th through the 13th. And if anybody's looking for information, it's all filed with the clerk's office. So that's my update for that. And I do want to make a couple of disclosures tonight. The first being item 9E1. It's a typical disclosure, Mr. Chair. It references travel expenses. One of them is listed as AFD. I have no direct financial interest in this, but my husband is a member of AFD, so I'd just like to disclose that. And the second, Mr. Chairman, the item that you just discussed about the matter of the McDonald Center, I do want to disclose that I did have an ex parte communication this morning. I answered a telephone call in which I didn't realize that Mr. McKinnon, the appellant, was the gentleman on the other end. Our discussion was very candid. I told him it wasn't appropriate for me to have a discussion with him about the substantive matter, and that if he wanted to discuss it, he needed to do so in a public forum. And I invited him to come to the Assembly meeting this evening. Mr. Chair, I don't believe that would disqualify me, but I did want to put that on the record for you and the body to consider.
Thank you, Ms. Domboski. Regarding the former, you get to accept that memorandum. Tough luck. Regarding the latter, I think each of us have received some communication from the appellants, and it's okay to get that information, so there's no conflict, and you will be compelled to participate. And that ruling applies to everybody here, unless anyone has any questions or concerns about that. Anything else, Ms. Domboski?
No, sir. Oh, I do have one more thing.
Okay.
Now that I'm thinking of it. representing the wonderful community of Chugiak Eagle River. I do want to invite the public, the assembly, and of course the administration out this weekend to Bear Paw. The Bear Paw Festival will start, it'll kick off on the night of the 9th, but the real festivities really start the 10th. And on Saturday, we have our big Bear Paw Parade starting at 11, so everyone is invited out. And I have heard many assembly members are coming, so we will publicly notice it. So I invite you all out. Hopefully we'll have a wonderful, wonderful weather. Definitely you can get your funnel cakes and your all your good stuff.
Goodness knows no one got enough over the 4th of July weekend.
You're right.
Thank you, Ms. Naboski.
You're
And
welcome.
my thanks to you and the subcommittee, Mr. Trainee and Mr. Evans, for your work on the adjudicatory matter that will be for you in September. Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have a Budget and Finance Committee report, but I did want to give, if I may, an update on First Lady Michelle Obama's Let's Move initiative that Anchorage is now a participant in, and we have been for some time. The initiative in Anchorage is getting some really, really great momentum. There's a lot of work being done within our community to address childhood obesity. We have a really, really great working group. We have great participation from United Way, the state, school district, AEDC, and we're going to have somebody from the health department at our next meeting, Mr. Trainee, Senator Wielechowski, Representative Tarr, and also guidance from the United States Department of Health and Human Services. And within the initiative, there are 5 goals, and within each goal, there are milestones. And when you reach one milestone, you get a bronze. When you reach the next, you get a silver certificate, and ultimately a gold medal. So for goal number 1, which is Start Early, Start Smart, helping early care and education providers incorporate best practices for nutrition and physical activity, well, ASD has done a really, really, really great job to the point where we receive the bronze and silver medal already. Goal number 5, Active Kids at Play. Through the fine work of the Parks and Recreation Department, we are in line for this one goal for a bronze, silver, and gold medal in this category, and I'm really excited about it. And so the public knows Anchorage is really dedicated to the childhood obesity epidemic, and our efforts are now recognized at the national level, which is a wonderful thing, along with many other cities throughout our country. And I found out today, to my surprise, that the city of Barrow, Alaska is also a participant in the Let's Move initiative. Our next meeting is tomorrow, July 9th, from noon to 1:30 in the Assembly Conference Room, and it's open to the public if you want to come and hear what's going on. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Gray Jackson. Mr. Trainee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've got laid on the table item AIM 95-214A that describes the Rules Committee's meetings relative to the Community Council bylaws that are coming through. We don't have all of them up there progressing into us, and I really appreciate Darrell for his never-ending diligence on working on these.
Thank you, Mr. Trainee. And thank you, Darrell. Mr. Evans.
Just briefly, we have not had a labor subcommittee meeting since our last meeting, but I did want to report that the municipal clerk's office was successfully able to enter into an agreement with the state clerk's office that would allow the ballot referendum on AO 37 to be on the state's ballot in November, which would remove the need for a concurrent election and the expense of that. Just wanted to thank Ms. Moser for her efforts in coordinating that, and for the chair for jiggling the state's chains to make them realize we had a time commitment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. My pleasure. Mr. Steele.
No report this time.
Thank you, Mr. Steele. Ms. Johnston.
Yes, there'll be an enterprise committee meeting on July 17th. We are negotiating right now with the clerk's office for the time. It might be 11 to 12 versus 11:30 to 12:30. So I will get back to you on that. Also, I want to add to the kudos as far as the 4th of July on the park strip. It's been an amazing event, and I've seen it grow every year, and it really makes you feel like you're part of a real community. And I think I walked with the bridge builders along with the mayor, and they said that was the largest group they had with the bridge builders this year. I'm not sure if there should be any connotation of the mayor and Senator Giesel and I riding in a shovel on a tractor. I used to do that a lot as a kid, and I know where the shovels went then, but we won't discuss that. Thank you.
Ms. Johnston, I'm quite sure that no safety officer reviewed that particular recession before it left. Ms. Novoski, do you have a follow-up on that?
Oh boy, where could I go with that? I'll refrain, though I don't want to, but I will. Ms. Johnston, I just want to point out that on the 17th, some of us are members of both Enterprise and Budget and Finance. That's probably why you're negotiating.
Right, we have that committee, Budget and Finance, and the Labor Ad Hoc Committee.
All at the same time.
Well, just various overlapping, so we'll work it out with the clerk's office.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Honeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The two issues. One is the next Public Safety Committee meeting for the month of July is next Wednesday, the 16th, from noon to 1 here at the Lusac Library, the conference room between here and the William Marston Theater. So you're, of course, invited. Just for off-topic, but related to our constituent concerns related to NSTAR gas increase that we've probably all been hearing a lot about. I just got conversation recently returned back from the RCA as well as from the NSTAR, and there will be a public hearing where the public can be heard at 9 a.m. Wednesday, the 23rd of July, at the RCA offices, 701 East 8th, Suite 300. And I'll repeat that towards the end of the meeting if you don't mind, and as well maybe pass that along for the benefit of the public. It's literally a very complicated explanation that was described, and I won't even pretend to go there, but apparently the Daily News article did not summarize exactly the concerns, but there's a lot more to it, and I would encourage the public, if they have concerns, to contact or be in attendance at this public hearing, 9 a.m. Wednesday the 23rd at 701 East 8th Avenue. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Honeman. Ms. Domboski?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just following up on Mr. Honeman's comment about NSTAR, I just wanted to let the body know that I was contacted right before the meeting, and a representative from NSTAR, Mr. Sims, was going to be at this meeting. So if assembly members had questions for him, he was more than willing to come up and testify. And I'm not sure if he's here yet or when he'll be here, but he will be here.
Okay, we might take that up under special orders or something of that nature.
Thank you.
Mr. Hall?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. As Mr. Traney indicated, we do not have any items on the addendum, but we do have one laid on the table items. That is AIM 95-2014A, ostensibly from me. That's the conforming community council bylaws. It should be on your desk. With that, we are at the consent agenda. May I please have a motion to approve?
So moved.
And may I have a motion to incorporate the single item laid on the table?
Second.
Okay, with that, we're ready to pull some items. Let's start with you, Mr. Starr.
No items.
Mr. Peterson.
No items. Thank you.
Ms. Domboski.
9 Alpha 1 for reading.
Thank you, Ms. Domboski. Ms. Gray-Jackson.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Traney.
9C6 and 9E3.
And Mr. Traney, would you also kindly pull 9 Delta 2 on my behalf?
Absolutely, sir. 9 Delta 2.
Thank you.
That's right, you do have an issue with that, don't you?
Yeah, I do. Mr. Evans?
No items.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Mr. Steele?
Yes, are we going to do a pledge?
I'm sorry?
We did a pledge?
We did.
Where was I?
We think you were sitting there.
Apparently the same thing, the same place where you
I
were
must
doing roll
be
call.
preoccupied, I'm sorry.
What's the symbol of the rainbow?
Ms. Johnston?
Yes, I'd like to, and I know that they were confused in our agenda, but pull 9E, E5.
Okay. Mr. Honeman?
No items.
And Mr. Hall?
No items.
All right. Would you, I'll quickly restate to make sure we have everything correctly. Yeah. We have item 9 Alpha 1, item 9 Charlie 6, item 9 Delta 2, 9 Echo 3, and 9 Echo 5. Is that everything? We do not need a drum roll. Please proceed to vote on the balance of the agenda minus those items. And amazingly, Mr. Trainey's vote counts. That passes unanimously. That brings us to item 9 Alpha 1. Ms. Domboski.
Move to approve.
Please press buttons. Is there an objection? Seeing and hearing none, that item is approved. Ms. Domboski, your reading. Do we have a representative from Ms.
Karen?
Ferguson? She's here. Very good. Go ahead, Ms. Domboski.
Thank you. A resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing and honoring Karen Ferguson for dedication to the Refugee Assistance and Immigration Services RAISE program. Whereas in 2003, Karen was hired as a Refugee Assistant and Immigration Services Program Manager at Catholic Social Services, and in 2005 was appointed RAISE Program Director and Refugee Coordinator for the state of Alaska. And whereas in these roles, Karen has helped welcome over 2,000 refugees to Alaska from all over the world, including Sudan, Somalia, Bhutan, Myanmar, and as they began building new lives in the last frontier. And whereas Karen has, under her doctorate in clinical psychology and her knowledge and sensitivity to different cultures, to establish a loyal and close-knit team that has inspired by her leadership in providing an outstanding level of service to refugees arriving in Alaska. Whereas serving as an ambassador for RAISE, Karen is truly committed and passionate about providing creative best practice services while consistently demonstrating a willingness to think outside the box. And whereas, as a result of Karen's outstanding leadership and her team's hard work, over 80% of resettled refugee families in Alaska have been employed within 6 months, and over 75% receive no public assistance after 12 months as they successfully integrate into their new homes. Whereas Karen will be stepping down from her duties in Alaska as of July 31st, 2014, to embark on new adventures while enrolling in a master's program in peace and conflict management at the University of Haifa in Israel. Now, therefore, the Anchorage Assembly resolves that this body takes great pleasure in recognizing and honoring Karen Ferguson for her commitment, passion, and dedication to Anchorage's refugees and immigrant communities and social justice, and for her contributions to making Anchorage more vibrant, diverse, and inclusive community, passed and approved by the Anchorage Assembly this 8th day of July 2014.
Welcome, Ms. Ferguson.
Thank you. Okay. People who know me know that I would rarely be speechless, but I'm speechless. Thank you so much for this incredible honor. I do want to say that there is absolutely no way that I could do what I do without the incredible support of Catholic Social Services, led by an unbelievable leader, Susan Bomulaski. It's been just an incredible honor to work with you. And with the team that I work with, the staff at the refugee program are dedicated, passionate people, often refugees and immigrants themselves. So it is definitely not alone that I do my work. And finally, I want to thank the city of Anchorage. The state of Alaska is pretty huge, so I guess I'll just focus on Anchorage. Anchorage has been a welcoming place for refugees and has been willing to create a refugee program here and given us the support to become an award-winning program, a model program in many of the things we do for the nation. So I think Anchorage should take great pride in the work that we do with refugees here in Anchorage and in the both tolerance and embracing of diversity that has happened over this past decade that I've been privileged to be here in this role. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Ferguson. Don't run away because Mr. Honeman has a question for you.
Well, and thank you so much for your service for our community. And I know that last I checked, I think it was like 96 different languages spoken in the school district, and I'm sure quite a bit of the folks from the immigration refugee program has had some to play in that. And so I don't know how you were able to communicate and have been able to do it very well. So that's a challenge in and of itself. So safe travels to Israel, and I'm not sure if you're going to have to be domiciled there while you're attending. I imagine so. But anyway, thank you so much for being a vibrant part of Anchorage and helping us to be a bit more diverse. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ferguson, and congratulations on your impending semi-retirement.
Thank you.
That brings us to item 9, Charlie 6. Mr. Trainee.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Starr. Could you press your button, please? And my understanding is we have a representative from the appellant of this particular matter, Alaska Diversified Contractors, present who wishes to address us. Whomever that is, if they'd please come forward at this time, sir. Greetings, sir. We're going to give you 5 minutes to state your concerns about this matter, please. And please start with your name.
Okay, first of all, my name is John McCormick. I'm the owner of Alaska Diversified Contractors, LLC. Only had a few minutes to come up, basically on the drive in from Eagle River, to come up with a few things to address you guys in regards to the Harry McDonald Memorial Ice Rink upgrades. It's been a little over 2 months since this project bid out, since bids were opened publicly. During that particular time, the Muni, or purchasing office, has asked me 3 or 4 different times to submit different things based on qualifications to some of their different, they have a supplementary condition in the specs, okay? And I don't want to get too much into that because there's no way I could explain it in 5 minutes. The bottom line is I do want to get a few key points out to you tonight, right now, and a couple of them being, and I'll just start with the first one. I first want to say that we have an open book policy, so if you guys were to do any further review, I am absolutely not hiding anything, and think that there might be some things out there that you might want to see, okay? Number one, we are on just under a $2 million project. We are $270,000, are right in that ballpark, cheaper than the second bidder, okay? We have submitted a team, and the municipality has put us under severe, pretty tight. There's a pretty tight review policy on the refrigeration portion of this project because it is a new system. It's a CO2 system, and we have been scrutinized pretty heavily on it. I do have the supplementary conditions right here. I copied off 12 of them if you guys would like to take a look. It basically says that you have to have 7 total rink installs and 4 with the direct system, okay, or basically in that, to be qualified to do this project. And, you know, not necessarily in those terms, but pretty much that's the gist of it. Some of the contentious arguments are that I have to have my refrigeration/expert on the site 100% of the time. But the specs don't ask me to do that, okay? So I didn't put that in my bid, and they've been hammering me for 2 months to say, in order for your company to be qualified, your refrigeration expert has to be on site 100% of the time. Well, the specs and what they put out to the public to bid on don't say that he has to be there 100% of the time. And quite frankly, we didn't put the money in there for that, you know, which is another $20,000-$30,000. It's not substantial. We said, okay, fine, we're not going to worry about that, okay? Every time we've answered a question, they've moved the goalpost a little further down the road for us in the question and answer period until it came to a review board meeting. I requested a review, and they did an independent review. During that independent review, 7 out of 7 members of that independent review voted for my company moving forward on this particular project. So I'm a little bit confused at how that process works. I've never been involved in a review process like that, and the first thing I get when I come back from the holiday vacation is that they're moving the second place bidder forward. The Muni is. I've tried to remain extremely as positive as possible on this, but, having such short notice from the time they put the second place bidder on the agenda and now only a couple days, I was caught a little off guard, to be quite frank with you guys. On Monday morning, I'm like, okay, now where do I go from here? Because I'm getting no correspondence through purchasing and can't talk to any of the assembly members and can't talk to the independent review board, and here I am. You know what I mean? So, trying not to be frustrated, I don't know which way to go other than try to explain to the best of my ability in 5 minutes where I'm at, right now. Now, during none of these meetings did they not qualify us for having the appropriate refrigeration guru, if you will, okay? He's an expert in the field. He's built every rink in Alaska since 1990, except for the Juneau rink. He resides out of Minnesota, but he does have a place on the Kenai, and he's been very involved in the construction of ice rinks in Alaska, okay? And he meets the requirements of this. And so, once he's met those requirements, then they've asked us to have him there 100% of the time. And it seems like they keep asking for different things, or now they've asked us for, well, how's the relationship with him going to work? How is the relationship between you and, your refrigeration guru going to work? As far as, is he going to be a subcontractor, or is he going to work, and, it just seems like they keep asking for different questions. I don't want to get too long-winded on that,
I do need to wrap up, sir.
So, anyways, I guess in a nutshell, I would really ask that you guys take a hard look at the dollar difference and the review board's findings on, what they conducted. I do know that meeting was tape recorded, and I do know that you could have an opportunity to listen to that, but there just hasn't been enough time frame, I don't believe, for you guys to do that. Has anybody listened to the review?
We do have a couple questions for you, actually, so if you could hold on. Mr. Honeman, did you have a question for?
I reviewed both documents that are on the agenda. There's one coming up shortly from 9 Echo 3. This is 9C6, which is the recommendation to award to the second bidder. But when was your meeting where you claimed that 7 out of 7 board members agreed that your company should go forward? Do you remember? Do you have that documented? What date was that?
Okay, this is 9E3, Information and Reports.
Correct. Because on this one, it says that they met on the 9th of June, and on the 19th of June, which I think is probably a typo here, that 8 out of 9 members were there, only 1 being out of town, and that their recommendation was to follow the concurrence of the purchasing officer, which is to forward the second bidder because your company was declared responsible bidder.
Did you look at the third paragraph, line 18?
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Okay.
Ms. Domboski?
Sir, I'll pass right now. I'm in queue to talk to Ron.
Okay, very good. Mr. Cormack, I don't see any further questions. If you could stay in the front row in case somebody else has something else that comes up, we'll grab you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cormack. Thank you for taking the time to come see us this evening. Ms. Domboski?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the chair, Mr. Haddon, I would like, this was a very detailed assembly memorandum that you submitted, but I would like for you to articulate exactly the process that you went through, the reason this company was disqualified, and the decision to go with the second bidder.
Mr. Dombrowski, through the chair, the process that we utilized was after opening of the bid and seeing that ADC was the lowest apparent bidder. We then, in accordance with the supplemental conditions, went back to him and asked him to demonstrate to us in a letter where he had met the supplemental conditions of building 7 rinks with a total, and then working on 4 additional rinks. He came back to us. We forwarded that letter to our technical team and asked them to evaluate it. They came back, asked for additional questions. We went back to him a second time and said, please respond to these additional questions. He did. The third time he came back, we asked him to respond again, elaborating on those. And on his third response back to us in a letter of May 21st, the contractor told us, we have no ice rink experience, nor does our subcontractor or mechanical subcontractor have any ice rink experience. We then established that we needed to talk with him to explain some of our issues. We then met with him on May 22nd, I believe it was, explained to him what it was we needed, that we needed him to demonstrate to us how he was going to have his refrigeration expert there through the performance period of the contract, since his refrigeration expert at that time was committed to 3 other rinks that were being built at the same time as this rink. We said, please provide us an equivalent individual to them that will be there if this individual cannot be there. We asked for that. This was over the Labor Day weekend. We asked for that information to be delivered to us on Monday morning. He delivered to us a couple of names that upon our technical team's evaluation discovered that they did not have the appropriate ice rink experience. At that time, we notified him that he was a non-responsible contractor, and then the rest is kind of history, as John reported, that he requested the bidding review board review, that the mayor then convened the bidding review board. We met with the bidding review board, and the AIM is document here that the bidding review board declared that based on the information available to the purchasing office at the time we made the decision, that it was a responsible decision that we made to declare him a non-responsible contractor.
Sure. Thank you. And if I may follow up?
Please, Ms. Dubowski.
Thank you. So just to articulate your point, again, the bid review board actually upheld your initial decision. However, they took the unusual step of allowing additional information at that hearing, and that's what I heard on the audio because I did listen to the meeting.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I'll yield at the moment in case other members have questions, but I will have comments at the end.
Thank you, Ms. Dubowski. And I presume, Mr. Haddon, you meant non-responsive.
No, sir, a non-responsible bidder, not non-responsive, non-responsible because he did not have the technical capability to perform the contract.
Okay, thank you, sir, for that clarification. Mr. Honeman.
Well, and I know we're on topic 9C6, but 9 Echo 3 actually dovetails in, and I'm not sure if we should make the appropriate motion to have this concurrently held.
Well, we pulled both items so they could both be considered by the body, but really the action item for us is 9 Charlie 6.
Correct.
You can reference 9 Echo 3 in your comments.
That's my question. I know that Mr. Michelson is here from the bidding review board, and I don't, as I reread through line 18, and I see where, and then line 22 as well, I guess it would be appropriate to ask Mr. Michelson, is there any information that the board bidding review panel has that perhaps purchasing didn't, the recommendation was that upon hearing additional information that they recommend the award be granted to ADC? Is that to speak for itself, or is there anything more that you guys had that perhaps purchasing didn't, that puts them that to be responsible? Because it says in the previous paragraph that they were non-responsible at the time of the bid that was opened.
Good evening, Mr. Michelson.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chairman, fellow Assembly members, my name is Paul Michelson. I'm the current chair of the Bidding Review Board for the 2014 season. We had a meeting on June 19th, fairly extensive meeting. We did, through testimony, hear things that what we were trying to state in the letter was that per the original requirement from ADC, the purchasing department did the correct thing by making them non-responsible or non-qualified. However, during the hearing, there was a lot of testimony. Through testimony, we felt that ADC more than adequately met the demands of the purchasing department. So we tried to write it in a way that you always have to make a motion in a positive sense. So we made the first motion in a positive sense where purchasing department found ADC non-qualified. However, by listing Joel Anderson as their lead, we determined through testimony, through their performance, that they could then be qualified. That's why we wrote on items 18 through 20, stating that the board recommended that the award go to ADC. We also felt the board in executive session, if I can speak about executive session, that was silenced.
Only if you don't, only if you don't reveal
I won't speak about executive session. However, it was the opinion of most of the members that we felt that it was a time essential contract, and saving the municipality of Anchorage close to $300,000 was important. But more than that, we felt it was important to immediately award the contract to ADC so the project can go on, so that the McDonald Center would be down less time in the end and lose less revenue through ice rentals. My son skated since he was 5 years old, so I know all about ice rentals and how difficult it is to get. The board had trouble with the requirement of Joel Anderson, the CO2 or / refrigeration expert, having to be on the job 100% of the time. The guy has been doing ice rinks. I don't know his qualifications. I just met him that one day on June 19th. But he says he's been responsible for over 100 rinks. He has never been asked, ever, in one contract to be on the job 100% of the time. So we really had trouble with that. We were trying to understand why the municipality had this requirement. So we bounced it, and we felt that we gave you the best decision that we could come out of eight gentlemen sitting around a room. So we felt we did the best job we could at the time.
Thank you, Mr. Michelson. Any follow-up, Mr. Honeman? Ms. Johnson, I think, wants to follow up on that then.
So, do you, or maybe I'm asking purchasing at the same time, feel that you were given additional information that was not part of the bid package when the bid package came to the municipality? Because as you know, a bid package is a time in place.
Through the chair, Ms. Johnson, we felt that ADC didn't understand the requirements of this 100% requirement for Joel Anderson to be on the project. Joel Anderson didn't understand it because he'd never had to do it. So we felt that once they were there, and we asked the question right out, is Joel Anderson going to be a subcontractor of CRL? Is he going to be a consultant of CRL? Is he going to be an employee of CRL? And we tried to ask those questions, and they didn't know, because what they were basically stating is, we will do whatever ADC and CRL would do, whatever it takes to meet the requirements of the city contract that they've never known to be existing. That's why it was very difficult, and that's why we made the decision that we made through additional testimony. Does that make sense?
Well, I guess I need to ask purchasing. In the bid package, were these requirements published in the bid package?
The supplement, Mr.
Try your mic again, Mr. Haddon. Mr. Haddon.
Excuse me. The supplemental conditions is stated to be a qualified contractor. They had to have built 7 rinks, of which 4 of them were direct. They were basing their entire qualifications upon Mr. Joel Anderson. If Mr. Joel Anderson is not present during the time that performance of the contract is occurring, then the contractor is not qualified. That is my opinion.
So the second bid that you're asking us to address tonight, they have in their bid a person on staff or a subcontractor that has these capabilities that will be there 100% of the time?
Yes, ma'am.
And they were aware of this in the bid process?
Yes, ma'am, I believe so. The second contractor has done well over 18 rinks, most of them within Alaska.
What I'm trying to figure out here is, as how much more information you got in the bid review process that was not part of the bid and not part of that time section.
Through the chair, Ms. Johnson, I'll try to dissect that. We couldn't find in the bidding documents that we had in our booklets that stated the requirements Mr. Hayden just stated. We determined, or we figured, that that was mentioned after the opening of the bids. We could be wrong, but none of us on the bidding review board could find that requirement in the bidding documents. This is why it was a very troublesome, if I may start from the beginning, we had trouble. I questioned why the bidding review board should even be called, because it was a qualification issue, not necessarily a financial issue. But since we were called, like I said, we did the best we could with the information that was presented to us. And we found that because we could not find the documentation that's just been stated, we felt that that was an added stipulation, and then that ADC was trying to meet the requirements of the newly added stipulations. And I could be wrong, but if I'm wrong, 8 other people were wrong too.
And could I ask a response from purchasing on that? You said it was a supplemental, and when did the bidding, when did they receive the supplemental?
The supplemental condition was part of the original bid.
Okay, so what, you feel it was part of?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Honeman? Mr. Michelson or somebody else?
Well, I guess Mr.
You know my name.
Mr. McCormick.
Oh, McCormick.
And Mr. Michelson, you may be able to help too. Was at the very beginning of this contract, when you proposed your bid, was this gentleman, Mr. Joel Anderson, always intended to be your subject matter expert on the CO2 ice rink installation for the refrigeration part?
I have the supplemental conditions right here, and by all means, yeah, Joel Anderson he flew up here from Minnesota. He wanted to bid the job with me, and we went in as a team. We went in as a 3-part team because there was some mechanical work on it. It was me, CRL Services, and Joel Anderson, and I've never wavered from that from the start. And I don't know if that explains, what you're asking
That was
for.
the question. So you haven't changed one bit. Whether that was when you bid, that was the way it was bid.
Well, let me rephrase one thing. It won't take very long. There was, we did have Joe Anderson listed as a subcontractor through Total Mechanical, but we offered to put him on CRL's payroll to satisfy the muni when they kept changing a few things on us during this review process and adding in the 100%. Stipulation that he needed to be there, time-wise, So we feel that we've made every effort to accommodate and to move this thing forward. And here we are 8 weeks to 10 weeks later, and we've lost a good portion of our summer right now already, So,
Thank you, Mr. McCormick. Ms. Domboski?
I don't have any questions for you, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Mike, I'm going to go right into comment.
Go ahead and have a seat, sir.
Yeah. I'm going to go right into comments because I listened to the bid review board and I heard the discussion, and what I clearly heard was typically when you're in an adjudicatory or an appellate mode, you base yourself on the record. There was clearly new evidence that was introduced. And also what I heard, and I think it's part of just being maybe a new bidder, I'm not sure, but I heard, is he a subcontractor? Is he a consultant? Is he an employee? I wasn't really sure. And it sounded to me a lot like a bidder that was, let's say, adjusting commentary to try to get, satisfy the municipality, but there's no question in my mind it was changing. And the fact that we are basing the award, okay, you have a company that's not done this before, not build an ice rink, but we have a guy that's built 100. So if you're going to award the new company that's not really done it, based on the guy's experience that's done 100, he better be there, because you got to know what you're doing. And so when I'm listening to it, I'm sorry, I was not swayed. And I will support the administration's recommendation because one thing I know, we have a Freon system that has to be scrapped the right way so we can reuse and we can capture that gas. We have to do this right. We're already behind schedule. The revenue that we're losing, I want to do this right once, and I want to do it as quickly as possible, and I don't want to have to come back and do it again. And I think Mantech, the second bidder, has already shored up their qualifications. They understood it. I read the bid. I sat 2 hours in Ron's office with him going over it, and I was critical. And because I was concerned to make sure it was a fair process. And what I clearly read, you have to have done 7 ice rinks and 4 of them this and 4 of them that. And to me, without their expert witness or their expert consultant from out of state not being there, they don't qualify. So if he's not there, in my opinion, I'm not a purchasing guy or girl, but in my opinion, I agreed with the first part of the bidding review board, but I think they kind of trolloped into the realm of trying to explain and help a new bidder weave their way through the process. And unfortunately, I don't think that's the place, is at that board. I think they all are very intelligent. They've all done their homework. They ask good questions. But in this case, I'm not willing to have a test case on a multi-million-dollar project. So, as a member that represents this district and I just graciously put in front of the body the fact that I've spent hours on this to make sure it was fair and to make sure that we get a good project in the end, because that's what everybody wants. And I'm hopeful that ADC, as they go forward with a relationship with the city, when a bid comes up, when it's open, the purchasing office is an open door. You can go in and they will explain to you what a bid means and how to understand it. So I would hope you would explore that relationship so you understand the process a little bit more, but to go this route to the bid review board and then lobbying assembly members, it makes me uncomfortable. I think the public's business needs to be done in a very, very articulate fashion, and we can't deviate for one bidder over another bidder. And that's why I think the decision of the purchasing officer was correct. I support it, and I think we'll get a very deliberate outcome, which will be an ice rink that's up and running in a reasonable amount of time. And just so the body knows, we're already a couple months behind, so we've already run into ice time. And it's going to be a challenge because we're going to redistribute our hockey players all throughout Anchorage and the Valley. So I'm hopeful you will take that under consideration, and I urge support of the administration's recommendation.
Thank you, Ms. Dembowski. Mr. Starr.
Well, in addition to Ms. Dembowski doing that, it started sometime for me a ways back when Mr. Haddon and Mr. Rada, I think initially had interest to just sort of get on it as tendered the bid, and then when I think they lifted the lid on the ADC, I think it was a raised eyebrow look first, and it was a cursory call them in and have a sit down with them, which turned into 3 more opportunities, including one final one on the 4th one. So what I feel is also purchasing probably did a good job of trying to accommodate. Perhaps we didn't read it correctly. Perhaps we didn't get the right information. Can you answer this again? Not in a way of continuing to move the shell, but I believe to really work with that group to begin with. And I think this is where it comes right down to the fiduciary responsibility that we have to let it go. And we just had a final meeting with Mr. Rada, the city manager, Ms. Dembowski, and purchasing to review, again, to make certain that we gave everybody a fair chance. And Mr. Chairman, I think your call to bring somebody up to the microphone, highly unusual perhaps, but another state where that would be the case. But with Ms. Dembowski's work and sort of the diligence throughout of purchasing and their information that they've provided to us, representatives of that area, I would urge support in 9C6.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Starr. Mr. Honeman.
I generally lean towards, and I appreciate my colleagues to lean towards our end of the district when it's an issue on our district as well. So I tend to believe that Ms. Dembowski's efforts, and of course Mr. Starr's being in concert and contact with Parks and Rec and all. I'm a little concerned that we may be walking into an area for one reason or another, and I'm not sure if it's appropriate to ask our municipal attorney in the open forum, but because this looks like a money issue. In the end of the day, it'll be a money issue, whether it's going to cost us for picking second versus first, and of course that's already we know it's about 270,000 more. I'm very familiar with the hockey rink, certainly been involved in hockey in Alaska for a number of years, and that rink in particular as well. So I share with Ms. Domboski we want it done right. I think we ought to be fair to our bidding review board. They were asked to do due diligence, and I think they did. And so I laud Mr. Michelson and the board for taking up an issue that, like you were saying, you were a little confused. You normally on the money end of it. But whatever comes your way, I expect that the board will, that's what we ask you to do, and that's what you're volunteering, I believe volunteering, with your expertise. And certainly you bring expertise that we don't have, other than I know what a hockey rink looks like, and that in particular. So, I'm a little conflicted in the sense that I hear that we have a guy who's maybe not the best in a presentation. Maybe he's better at doing than writing up a review off of a bid packet. I can relate, but I guess perhaps that does come back to get it together a little better so you can state your case. I don't know. That's likely what seems to happen here. He didn't state his case, so it's a little troubling, and I'm not real sure how I'm going to look at this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Honan. Mr. Starr, final comment?
No, I just made mention that Mr. Wheeler was also at that final summary meeting that we had last week as well. So I think that he could say something now, or we could just move forward. But it's he also substantiated, I believe, some of the process prior to the bidding review board, and then he had some concerns, not openly critical of the bidding review board, but without paraphrasing him. I think, Mr. Honeman, your concern would probably be allayed whether or not you want to ask Mr. Wheeler that or not.
I'd like to hear his response, possible concern over the challenge to the bid.
Mr. Wheeler? Welcome.
Through the chair, assembly members, the concerns of the municipal attorney's office were focused on what the bidding review board is called upon to do and whether or not we should pay particular attention to the policies behind the sealed bid process. And weighing those two things, our concern was that we need to focus on making sure that all bidders are treated fairly and equally, that when you submit a bid, you follow the bid specs, that you make a commitment to bid the project and do the project for the price given and under the qualifications that are necessary to make the job work. And while I understand what the bidding review board did, I think it's more important that we focus on making sure that we have a bidding process that all vendors can rely on and know that when they put their bid in on time and provide the detail necessary to meet the qualifications and the bid specs, that should be given a higher priority than allowing bidders to come in after the fact and present new evidence, which opens the door to concerns about how bidding is done and whether or not bidders will commit to and provide by the bid closing date all of the required information, or will they continually try to manipulate that process, not that that was done necessarily in this case, but put you in a situation where you're hearing more and more reviews where bidders are less and less committed to their initial submittal and look to find ways to get the bidding review board or this body to pit one bidder against the other by manipulating the process. So in that context, it was our feeling that the purchasing officer's decision was a good one. And as I explained to the chair of the bidding review board, their role is to make recommendations. We appreciate their hard work and their effort, particularly when we're going to give them difficult cases. And the fact that we may disagree with them is by no means condemnation of their effort or their hard work.
Thank you, Mr. Wheeler. I see no one else in queue. Please proceed to vote on item 9, Charlie 6. We did have a motion, yes. We did. So by a vote of 10 yeas and 1 nay, that motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, I move for immediate reconsideration and urge a no vote.
Second.
Okay. There's a motion for reconsideration. A no vote is urged. Okay. Thank you very much. That brings us to item 9, Delta 2. Mr. Traney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You are the chair.
Mr. Chairman. I've done that before. Yes, Patrick. Need a motion on this one? Is there a second?
Second. Oh.
Okay. Mr. Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe that LLC, of which I'm a member, is going to purchase this license that's being transferred to a noted premise at the moment, and as such, would request that I'm not be excluded from participation in this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn. Direction of the chair, you're not to participate in this item for obvious reasons.
I don't have that obvious reason. Could I have some clarification on your interest? They show 50-50 ownership between Rubini and Hyde. Is that not true?
Patrick.
No, it's correct. We're buying it from them.
Oh, misread. Thank you.
Anything else? Madam Clerk, please bring up the voting. Please vote. Item is approved. 10 yeas and 1 absent.
Thank you, sir. That brings us to item 9, Echo 3. Mr. Traney.
Move to
Move to
accept.
approve.
Need a second?
Move to accept.
Okay, so moved, seconded. Is there already in discussion? Please proceed on accepting this memorandum. We're missing a few. Mr. Hall, Mr. Honeman. And that passes unanimously. That brings us to item 9, Echo 5. Ms.
Move to accept.
Second.
Please press buttons. Thank you. Ms. Johnston.
You might have noticed that I had a question of the administration as far as the overtime in the APD budget, and I understand that they haven't been able to get all the information yet to answer my question. And that is basically, I'm interested as far as how much overtime is going to event contract services, and what we're looking at revenues. It'd be nice if we knew at least the last 3 years of what revenues we've garnered from events and private contractors to APD. And then I'd also like to ask the administration how much of the overtime is grant-driven, just to get an idea of what is constituting this overtime so we know as we're looking as far as staffing. And that's it. Thank you.
So, Ms. Johnston, do you want to hold this one for a couple of weeks? Is that what? Or
No, I'm just publicly asking for this information that for the administration to share with all of us. I think it'll be helpful as we look at budgets.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Johnston, for that clarification. Mr. Honeman.
Well, I also saw that some overtime budgets on the financial report, like for instance, OM management budget for the information systems as well. That's 134% of its overtime budget has been spent to information technology, 326%. And they're over budget on in most of those areas, although that's not the largest dollar amount. That APD looks like they're still under by $1.75 million, almost $2 million under. Whereas public transportation is just under $159,000. They're 64% over the overtime budget. So I don't, why are we singling out just the police?
Actually, the reason I'm doing that is not to penalize them. As we go into the budget and as we're addressing concerns as far as shortages and contracts with APD, that's it. It's for information. I mean, I'm looking at all the same overtimes as you are, and I think actually I forgot to put it in writing. I was going to ask our CFO if some of these overtime budgets. I did ask you if they were going to. If they're manageable and if you've come up with management criteria so as we get closer to the end of the year, we're not looking at this overage.
Okay. So we'll look forward to that report. Fair enough. Anything else, Ms. Johnston? Okay. Please vote on accepting this information memorandum. We're missing a few. And that carries unanimously. That is the conclusion of our consent agenda. May I please have a motion to change the order of day?
Mr. Chairman, let's take up items 12A and 12B and then come back and do 11s.
Thank you very much. May I press your button, sir? May I have a second?
Second.
Any objection? Seeing and hearing none. Is Ms. Lapp here? Come on down. Welcome, ma'am. And Mr. Knox, if you're here, you're next.
My name is Jean Lapp, L-A-P-P. Good evening, Chairman and Assembly members. I am here tonight to voice some of my concerns regarding the housing situation in Anchorage. There are a number of housing issues that, in my opinion, have become a crisis in our city. My concern for housing extends far beyond my immediate family. In my profession, I talk with prospective home buyers, real estate licensees, builders, and others who are involved in many different housing arenas. What I see and hear over and over again is the lack of new housing stock, the lack of trained construction workers, properties desperately old, and in a price range that the median income wage earner absolutely cannot afford. Knowing these things, when I hear a developer is trying to build 122 new homes but can't because the EPA has determined that water flowing on the land is a creek, but the municipality states it's a drainage ditch, I wonder why isn't the municipality coming alongside of this developer to assist? Surely some study has been conducted, reams of paperwork gathered by the municipalities to support their findings. So my question is, has the municipality stepped up to work with the developer? Have those studies and that paperwork been made available to them? Delays cost money, and that cost will be ultimately paid by the consumer. I have been involved in some form of real estate almost my entire life. Back in the day, there used to be subdivision agreements where developers could go into an area to create a subdivision and then pay for the infrastructure cost of utilities, sidewalks, etc., as each property was sold, or an assessment was passed on to the buyer who could put the monthly amount in their mortgage payment. So my next question, has there been any discussion within the municipality to look into the possibility of doing something like this again? I know of a number of states where properties are advertised for sale with a special or a notation that there are no specials. And the special refers to special assessments for water, sewer, sidewalks, etc. There are cities and states throughout America working on these same types of issues. They have become creative in finding solutions while working with and not against developers. Trained construction workers have had to find other professions, rents constantly increase, families become more transient and more reliant on the public's assistance because there is such a limited amount of affordable homes. And when I talk about affordable housing, I'm not referring to any kind of subsidized housing in any way, either in price or payment.
Thank you, Ms. Lapp. We have a couple of questions for you, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Ms. Johnston?
Hi, thank you for coming this evening. I just wanted to say that as chair of the Title 21 committee, which is our planning code, I am going to re-engage the committee probably within the next couple of weeks, and we're going to start addressing concerns as far as Title 21. We rewrote it, as you might be aware, and right now we have the old and the new code going simultaneously, and we're going to start seeing which is working and why it's working and what corrections we need to make. And also in this committee we will be addressing affordability and how do we work with developers in the communities to promote residential housing.
And again, I want to reiterate that for affordable, I'm not referring to anything that's subsidized. There's no government grant or anything, but, hard-working people that are looking to put their own down payment in, pay their own closing costs, and get into a home of their own.
And I hear you loud and clear, and I hope you'll be interested and be part of our efforts. And I think we need housing for the full spectrum to make it affordable for everyone.
Ms. Dombrowski also has a question for you.
Thank you. Ms. Lapp, thank you so much for coming. I had a couple questions because I'm not familiar with where you're talking about. What part of town are we in? What creek? What developer? What area are we talking there was an issue that you know about?
Spinell, and I believe it's on the east side, kind of Lake Otis, 68th kind of area.
All right. So what I will commit to you doing is I will engage the assembly members from that district and see, if there's anything I can do to help. So we're definitely, this is a topic that interests me, and I get what you're saying about affordable housing. And so we want people to be able to build homes, live in homes, and it's really important. So thank you for coming.
I have some other information that I brought that I don't know if you would like to take a look at. It's kind of a worksheet that says what the costs are and for obtaining what is the average price of a home and what somebody has to make in order to afford that.
If you hand that to the clerk, she'll get copies for all of us.
Okay.
Yeah, you can bring that up when we have a few more questions for you first, though, if you don't mind.
Pardon me?
You can bring that up when you're done, but we have a few more questions for you, if you don't mind. Mr. Honeman?
Well, I too want to say thank you for, one of the things that we're all challenged with is being a bit creative to try to make things work. You may not know that Anchorage, the Bowl, is about 93% built. There's some vacant land in Bear Valley, and there's out towards Eklutna and Eagle River area. So what that means is largely we'll have to be redeveloping. So where there might be a mobile home, you'll see over in 34th and Boniface, there's been some kind of creative talk of, even though probably mobile homes are more affordable for someone on the lower income scale, they're trying to make it more attractive so that they can take that person, put them in a location, either move their mobile home or allow them to help get them into a house that with, maybe the same amount of land has more homes there at the same time, so it may become more affordable. So we'll probably see things going up rather than spreading out. There's not a lot of land right now, so it's difficult for a developer in Anchorage, in the Bowl. Now, you talk about a little farther out in the valley, there's some land out there, but not much here. So thank you.
Can I say something back to that? Mm-hmm. I know. I mean, I've lived here almost all of my life. I went through all the schools, graduated from here. My family lives here. But I know that there are areas like in Sand Lake where there is absolutely no water and sewer available to a chunk of land between here and here. And the cost for putting that in for assessments for those individuals, they're just not ever going to really vote on that because they have a large frontage. But there is land available, and it's really the infrastructure that's keeping a lot of it from being developed. And I'm certainly not going to say there's a lot because I understand that, but there is some. And it seems to be the infrastructure that's keeping a lot of the developers from moving forward.
And Ms. Gray Jackson also has a question for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First off, I want to thank you for being here this evening. I really appreciate your concerns, which is a concern of, I think, most of us in this community. We know that there's a housing shortage and a rental shortage. But are you familiar with a group called Housing Anchorage, Mary Jane Michael and Sue Fison?
As you can tell, I'm pretty passionate about this subject, so I do try to attend as many meetings as I know about and, do ask questions. And frankly, a lot of the things I find is there's just a lot of talk and a lot of studies, and everyone has come to the same conclusion. Mm-hmm. But I just don't see any kind of action going forth. And everybody you'll talk to says, yes, this is critical. This is something that we need, but nobody is moving forward to find a solution.
Yeah, thank you. So let me ask again, are you familiar with their organization? You are?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've heard them speak.
You've contacted them and talked to them? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lapp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Gray Jackson. Ms. Lapp, I think I recall talking with you a little bit down the road
yes.
here. And you were across the street, correct? Well, thank you very much for coming this evening. We have no further questions, but please keep in touch. Obviously, we appreciate your passion, and we need that passion as we move this project forward.
Okay. So can I leave these?
Yeah, please bring it on up, and we'll get it distributed. And Mr. Knox, if you want to come forward. Welcome, Mr. Knox. If you'd kindly introduce yourself, you have 3 minutes.
Yes. Good evening. My name is Peter Knox, spelled K-N-O-X. And as a denizen of the municipality of Anchorage and citizen of the state of Alaska, I would like to speak about golf infrastructure in our city and in our state. There is on the footsteps of the municipality a very fine golf facility which is sitting idle, or rather it's being used as a fitness park, and you all know that I'm talking about Eagle Glen on J-Bear. At the time of its demise as a golf course, Golf Digest had it ranked as the #1 golf facility in our state. And after some cursory Google research, I learned that the cost of building a new golf course is upwards of $2 million. I've also seen higher estimates as well. So whatever the case, right here in the larger Anchorage Bowl community, there exists a very expensive fitness park. I'm not here to praise the decision to close Eagle Glen to golf as being financially prudent in lean times, nor am I here to condemn it as being precipitous and short-sighted. Clearly, to do the latter before this assembly would be to bark up the wrong tree. Rather, as an Anchorage resident, and as a golfer, I don't make my money playing golf. I'm just a recreational golfer. I would like to make a plea before this austere body to collaborate with the military community to find ways to reopen Eagle Glen for its designed purpose, which of course is golf. To my knowledge, there are presently only 7 18-hole golf courses in the whole state. Losing Eagle Glen meant losing over 10% of the inventory. A rather big blow since, as you know, Eagle Glen have been enjoyed by military, civilian, and retiree golfers throughout our area. So what might collaboration entail? Perhaps it might mean that the municipality becomes a caretaker for the facility and manages Eagle Glen as a municipal golf course in the summer months. I don't want to be so arrogant as to suggest that I have just the right answer, but I am reminded of the old saying, where there's a will, there's a way. After all, man has walked on the moon. Surely a way can be found through dialogue, through bold thinking, to reopen Eagle Glen for golf, and with the good of the whole community in mind, I would like to suggest that this assembly might play a role in doing just that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knox. And just for your information, we did have some discussion with the city manager about this. I know there's some efforts afoot associated with our congressional delegation looking into this. But before you run off, we have a couple questions for you. Mr. Honeman is first.
Thank you for bringing this issue up to light. I did read where the DOD budget is obviously shrinking, and they're having to make some hard decisions themselves. And so that's actually going to be one of the challenges, is that the land itself it sets on is part of DOD land, and they'd have to come up with some agreement for whatever group, whether it's us or a nonprofit, to do that. And secondly, you're saying the facility itself costs about $2 million. Do you have any numbers, estimate of how much it costs to maintain it or operate it for the course of the summer? I mean, do we have an idea how much it might cost?
No, I don't. And frankly, I'm simply here as a recreational golfer, someone who wishes to enjoy the facility again as a golf course. I did a little cursory Google research on what it costs to build a golf course. So it's just sitting idle. It's a bit frustrating.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just wondering, you may not have this information, has it been more difficult to get tee times this summer because Eagle Glen has closed down? Do you have any information about that?
I've found that as long as I'm not tied to a particular time, I'll be able to find a tee time. Of course, you can, in the summer months in Alaska, you can always find a tee time, 7, up close to 8 p.m. So if you're willing to golf that late, you'll be able to, I've found anyway, play golf. So my argument is not so much that people aren't able to go and play golf. To my knowledge, they are. I have been able to find tee times. I guess my argument is that we have a very fine facility, which an investment was made to make it a golf course, and it's not being used for that purpose right now.
Thank you. And one follow-up comment. Russian Jack has rebuilt their tees and greens and is now open. So there's another course now that just opened recently that's available. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Mr. Steele has a question.
Yes, is Mr. Rada here?
I do not.
I didn't see him.
Yeah.
But I will ask those questions of him personally. I was lucky enough to be up here when I was in the service and had small kids, and using Eagle Glen not only for golf in the summer, but also to teach your kids cross-country skiing in the wintertime. It's a great facility, and it's an absolute shame that it's not open and being utilized. So I share your concern.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knox. That brings us to item 11A. Mr. Trainee.
Move to postpone item 11A.
Indefinitely?
Definitely.
Turn your mics up a little bit, it's hard to hear.
We'll do our best, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Second.
Please press your button, sir. Motion is to postpone this item indefinitely. Ms. Domboski,
Mr. Trainee, could you give me a little explanation?
why don't we go to Mr. Vacalis?
Thank you.
I got a few of them. They wanted it dead.
Thank you very much for the question. Yes, we're going to be coming back with a new one.
All right. I just want to make sure our utility gets what they need.
Yes, we're coming back with a completely revised one.
Thank you, sir.
With that, please proceed to vote. That motion carries unanimously. That brings us to item 11B. The motion is whether to reconsider. I need someone to actually make the motion, however. Ms. Johnston?
She already made it.
Do we have the motion in front of us? Okay. So we'll go ahead, and the second was, yeah. Okay. Ms. Domboski, on the motion to reconsider? Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm not sure if it's a debatable item, but I would just like a little clarification as to why.
Okay, let's vote on the motion to reconsider.
I don't know what I want to vote.
No, before I vote.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Mr. Chair, I move to waive the rules and allow the maker of the motion to reconsider to give us a brief explanation.
Okay. Ms. Johnston?
You'll see that we have an S version that basically establishes that if this property is sold, that the tax credit does not go with it.
Yes, I am.
And this was, Mr. Starr had asked this question during our meeting, and we weren't, at that point, and I'll defer to Ms. Mahoney, but thought that it was well stated in there, and we then looked in review and we're not sure because of legal counsel. Ms. Mahoney?
Yes, through the chair. We had made recommendations, or I had made recommendations as CFO in the AM and assumed that approval of the AO would incorporate the recommendations in the AM. And just to be safe, we wanted to incorporate those into the AO. And so when we went back and forth, everything was in the AO with the exception of the item noted on page 461 of your book, page 7 of 8, and it is underlined. So it is clearly the intention of the AM, but we wanted to be absolutely sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the clarification, and I'll urge a yes vote so we can fix that, clarify it. Thank you.
All right. Seeing no one else in queue, please proceed to vote. This is a vote on reconsideration. Oh, did you want to?
Yes, I did. I have a question.
Okay. My apologies.
No, sorry.
Mr. Trainee?
Does Mr. Marlowe know this is happening?
Through the chair, yes.
Okay. And he has no problems with it?
He does not, and we had sent this to him, and so he is fully aware.
Thank you. I just want to make sure we weren't skipping the individual. No. Thank you, ma'am.
All right. Now please proceed to vote. And the vote is to reconsider. Mr. Starr? That carries unanimously. That brings us back to the original item. Ms. Johnston?
I urge a no vote.
I think you wanted to move the S version?
Yeah, move 11.
Right, sorry. I want to move 135S.
Be item 11, Bravo 2.
Okay, we now have item, correct, we now have item 11, Bravo 2 before us. Is there discussion? Seeing and hearing none, please proceed to vote.
Right, which I thought we had to.
And that motion carries unanimously. Do you want to try and wrap up the wetlands work before our break? Yes, all right. That brings us to item 11C, Charlie. That's the AO 2013-132, an ordinance adopting the Anchorage Wetlands Management Plan revision as an element of the comprehensive plan. We have an S version in front of us. Do I have a motion on that yet? Okay, we have no motion pending, so I need a motion to approve. Mr. Trainee moves.
Move to approve the S version.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Ms. Gray Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have one amendment I'd like to move. I'd like to move amendment number 1, page 2, line 45, amend the sentence to read as follows. The lake itself shall be preserved without disturbance. The A wetland shall be preserved to the maximum extent possible. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Gray Jackson. Have you provided a copy of that to the clerk? Very good. Is everyone clear on that? We discussed this at the work session Friday, but I know not everybody was there. So does everyone understand the nature of that? Does anyone need an explanation before we vote on that amendment? Mr. Evans?
Yeah, I don't need an explanation. I do want to make a comment on it, though. The lake itself, Mosquito Lake is what we're talking about, is a Class A wetland. The motion Ms. Jackson is providing refers to the adjacent areas around the wetland. What we're doing, at least as I understand it with this amendment, is creating Mosquito Lake as a different category of protection than every other Class A wetland in Anchorage. We're changing the language for Mosquito Lake from to be preserved to the fullest extent possible, which is the language that it's applied throughout the entire wetlands management plan to every single piece of Class A wetlands there is, including ponds, lakes, streams, all the very sensitive ones. The language change here says that Mosquito Lake will not be disturbed, which sounds like it means a higher level of protection than the to the fullest extent possible language. And I know a number of constituents have asked for that change because they wanted to protect this property. I do think it's a problem. I think that I've seen no scientific reason why Mosquito Lake should be giving any further protection than any other Class A wetland. And I think when we're voting on documents like the Wetlands Management Plan, I think it's important that we base any of these decisions on the science as opposed to any politics involving, protecting specific lands that are more popular than others. So I would urge that we don't do this, make this change, and just keep Mosquito Lake as a Class A wetland that is protected to the full extent of every other Class A wetland in the city.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Evans, I want to thank you for everything that you just said. I really appreciate your opinion and what you had to say. But, and frankly, for me, personally, it's not about politics. It's about listening to everybody and especially listening to my constituents who elected me into office. First off, the language is the same language that was in the 1996 plan, and we're just keeping it the same. And I would urge that my colleagues vote for this. Frankly, the language is a little bit different in the original proposed amendment that wasn't brought forward, but in our work session on whatever day it was, this was the compromise language that was offered to us by the administration. We really appreciate the work that you did. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Gray Jackson. Mr. Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I also appreciate all the work you've done on this, Ms. Jackson, and I appreciate your efforts at responding to your constituents' concerns. The language, however, you're correct that the language being used in your amendment is from the 1996 plan. The problem is that for every other piece of Class A wetlands in the entire plan, we've changed the language since the 1996. My understanding was that that language change was meant to better incorporate the actual standard that is used by the Corps of Engineers when deciding to permit these pieces of property. My concern is that the Corps of Engineers, if we give them this plan, we have all the Class A wetlands listed as to be preserved without to the maximum extent possible, except for this one piece of property that we're saying with no disturbance. I think the Corps of Engineers would be correct in assuming that for some reason the municipality of Anchorage is assigning a higher degree of protection to this one lake than to any other Class A wetlands. And I'm sure that there are constituents in probably all of our areas that are particularly fond or particularly concerned about a piece of Class A wetlands in our area, a creek or a pond. So I think it's much more important that we treat them all the same instead of specifying one particular piece of property that has heightened protection. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. In wrap-up, Mrs. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for letting me wrap up. And again, Mr. Evans, thank you very much for your comments. And maybe we should consider making an amendment and changing all class wetland to the language that's here in this amendment. But the compromise was to change this one, and I think it was a really, really good one. And I feel confident that my colleagues will support this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Gray Jackson. Ms. Johnson, I'm sure on a different topic.
Yes, I would like to come up, and I have a question for you.
Mr. Tobish?
I appreciate Mr. Evans' note of inconsistency. I think it's a valid note. With your experience with these wetland management plans and with the Corps of Engineers, would this wording make any difference throughout Anchorage, or, I mean, have we highlighted Mosquito Lake in any way different than other lakes, or would they treat them all the same?
Through the chair, Ms. Johnston, they would treat them on an independent nature based on a project. So it varies from project to project and lake to lake. The language may make a difference in how they treat permits. It may not. It's really hard to say.
And do you know, with past history with this language in with the 1996 plan, did it make any difference? Of course, we had no construction going then, but...
Through the chair, Ms. Johnson, in similar locations where there were Class A wetlands or water bodies where the original language from 96 was in, again, it was case by case, but it did not make that much difference.
On Elmore, where there's a great deal of wetlands and lakes, was this language used in any of that in past plans? Do you know?
Through the chair, you're speaking about the Elmore extension from
Between
Tudor.
Abbott to Tudor?
I don't recall without the document in front of me. There may have been similar language for some of the areas along Little Campbell Creek where they did get permits.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tobish. I see no one else in queue. Please proceed to vote on the amendment. That motion carries 8-3. That brings us back to the S version as amended. Is there further discussion on the S version as amended? Seeing and hearing none, please proceed to vote. And that carries unanimously. We're going to take about a 20-minute break here, and we'll be back.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Honeman?
Is Mr. Sims from Instar still here? Could we change the order of the day to have him come up, just explain briefly if there's any questions? It might be of help. Otherwise, you're getting him down at the end of the meeting. I'm not sure if...
if you would make a motion, sir, to
I make a motion we change the order of the day
orders.
For special orders. Make a motion we change the order of the day to bring Mr. Sims up special orders.
You press your button, sir.
Second.
Is there any objection? Seeing and hearing none, welcome to the hot seat, Mr. Sims.
I'm not sure that it's going to take any length of time just so he can explain to the public.
Thank you for the opportunity. I don't have a prepared set of statements. I was just here merely for any sort of questions I could answer. I'd be happy to. And also to echo your statement about the July 23rd meeting before the RCA, where we will have a formal presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
And Mr. Sims, I'm sorry, I know you, but would you kindly state your name for the record?
Yes, my name is John Sims. I'm the Director of Business Development for Enstar Natural Gas.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Sims?
If you could just briefly, if you can synopsize, I guess, what the major concern is that there will be a 48% increase or around there for the quarter.
Yeah, through the chair, Member Honeman. The biggest issue with the notice that you saw in the press was that it was a 48% rate increase, which is not the case. This was simply a gas cost adjustment that is done on a quarterly basis. The gas cost is a mechanism that Enstar uses to purchase and deliver gas on behalf of our ratepayers and on the customers. It is a direct pass-through. There is no opportunity for NSTAR to make additional money, just like in the second quarter when there was a 32% decrease to customers' total bills. There wasn't an opportunity for NSTAR to lose money either in that scenario. So when you look at an annual cost of gas, it actually is very consistent to prior years, and we are still seeing a decrease from the cost of gas that we had back in 2009.
So if you can synopsize, how long can a customer anticipate having to pay an increased cost for gas?
Yeah, this adjustment in the gas cost is for a 3-month time frame, starting July 1 through September, and then there will be an additional adjustment to the gas cost, which will be reflected on customers' October bills.
So just have people that are interested show to the public hearing?
That's what we would suggest. And I'm always happy to speak with anyone. I've spoken with a number of customers. I've reached out to legislators, and we have set up some community meetings for them. We're also planning on doing so with Consumer Protection and the Regulatory Commission. So if anyone has any questions, they can definitely get a hold of me.
Thank you, Mr. Honeman. Ms. Gray-Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So are you saying that this adjustment is similar to MLMP? When you get your bill every month, there's a COPA, cost of purchase agreement adjustment, I think that's what it's called, and sometimes it goes up and sometimes it goes down depending on how much the electricity costs. Is this the same kind of thing you're talking about?
Yeah, through the chair, Assemblymember Gray-Jackson, that is exactly the same thing as the COPA adjustment that the utilities have.
Can I follow up, Mr. Chairman?
Please.
So, not to be critical, but I think it probably would have been a good idea if maybe you could have explained that to folks before NSTAR busted out with this 48% increase, because it's really frightened a lot of people, thinking that this was a permanent increase when I think if it's, like you just said, it's really not. And one, period, your cost can go up and down. So anyway, just food for thought. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If I may, through the chair, Assemblymember Gray-Jackson, we do notice the public in every single one of our bill inserts. So every customer that receives a bill from NSTAR receives a separate insert that specifically stated that this was a gas cost adjustment, and we do so every quarter, the quarter before. And it's also represented on every customer's bill, on the actual bill itself, notice. And then the Regulatory Commission of Alaska also notices that.
Thank you, Ms. Gray-Jackson. Mr. Sims. Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to clarify something, Mr. Sims. You said that there would be an additional adjustment for the fourth quarter. Are you anticipating that adjustment would be a downward adjustment?
Through the chair, Assemblymember Peterson. At this point, it is a forecast, but we are anticipating that the fourth quarter gas cost adjustment will be a slight decrease, but estimates are estimates.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Hall.
My question was answered, but I will make one comment. A lot of times I have conversations with the media, and they don't always get it, just like I say it to them. So I understand your pain.
And Mr. Honeman, in wrap-up.
Yeah, in wrap-up, and I want to thank you for coming tonight, and I also look forward to hearing the explanation. I watched my bill, and I also watched the statement, and I have 2 properties, and I haven't seen a whole lot of going down. Not to say that it hasn't. I'm just saying a 30% decrease, as you say, for a quarter. I didn't really feel that. If it's going to go up 50%, I haven't seen that yet either. But I don't know how soon you can publicize these things. My understanding is that you're billing ahead of time. So you're not, and then what a person actually uses is adjusted at the end of the usage period. Is that correct?
Yeah, through the chair, Assemblymember Honeman. NSTAR is forecasting how much gas they're going to purchase, and then they true up for the actual purchases. Right. So we don't pre-purchase gas and hold it during the summer months. And I will send you some documentation about the annual gas cost adjustment and the consistency that we've had for the past 5 years.
I'd appreciate it. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Actually, there's one more. Ms. Domboski also has a question for you, Mr. Sims.
Thank you. I'm going to go easy, maybe. Mr. Sims, thank you so much for being proactive and reaching out and coming to the Assembly so you could engage. I'm sure, like you, you've probably received a few, like us, you've probably received a few phone calls. But since you threw it out there, what is a good phone number for people to reach you at?
My phone number, my direct line, is 334-7625.
And I haven't received a lot of emails about it, a few, but essentially I've been referring people to the RCA, which it sounds like. Can you reiterate for us again when that meeting is, time and date?
July 23rd, 9 a.m.
701 East 8th Avenue, Suite 300.
All together now.
Perfect. Thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you at Bear Paw.
Absolutely.
All right. I see no one else in queue. Mr. Sims, thank you for coming down this evening.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And now we'll take our break. We'll be back at 7 o'clock. I'd like to bring the Assembly meeting back to order. We're on item 13A. This is a continued public hearing on AO 2014-71, ordinance of the Municipal Assembly, designating boundaries for the Fairview East Downtown Revitalization Area as deteriorated under Anchorage Municipal Code, Chapter 1235, with area findings to encourage and support redevelopment using certain tax abatement incentives authorized in Chapter 1235 and state law. This is a public hearing. However, I do intend to ask for a motion to continue it to our next meeting so that we can consider an administration proposal that is similar at the same time.
Nice version.
And with that, does anybody wish to speak to us on this matter? Seeing and hearing no one.
Move to continue, Mr. Chairman, to our next meeting.
Please press your buttons.
July 22nd.
Is there objection to that motion? Seeing and hearing none, we'll take that one up next time. That brings us to item 14A, AO 2014-76, an ordinance of the Municipality of Anchorage authorizing and providing for the issuance of general obligation refunding bonds of the municipality and to provide funds required to refund certain outstanding general obligation bonds of the municipality, providing for the form and manner of sale of said bonds, pledging the full faith and credit of the municipality to the payment thereof, authorizing the authorized municipal representative to determine the matter of sale of said bonds and related matters. This is brought to us by the Finance Department, Public Finance and Investments Group, and this is accompanied by an Assembly Memorandum AM 335-2014. This is a public hearing. If you wish to speak to us on this matter, please come forward at this time. Seeing and hearing no one, what is the wish of the body?
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Seeing and hearing none, please proceed to vote. And that matter carries unanimously. That brings us to item 14B, AO 2014-81, an ordinance approving a letter of agreement between the Municipality of Anchorage and the Anchorage Police Department Employees Association, deleting the obsolete requirement that community service officers be certified by the Alaska Police Standards Council, retroactive to April 1, 2014, and reducing the 30-day period for public review and comment. Brought to us by the Employee Relations Department, Labor Relations Division. It's accompanied by Assembly Memorandum 360-2014. This is a public hearing. If you wish to speak to this matter, please come forward. Seeing and hearing no one, public hearing is now closed.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Seeing and hearing none, please proceed to vote. And that motion carries unanimously. That brings us to item 14C, AR 2014-166, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage adopting recommendations to be forwarded to the Anchorage Metropolitan Area Transportation Solutions Policy Committee regarding the adoption of FY 2015 to 2018 Transportation Improvement Program, TIP, from the Community Development Department Planning Division. Is accompanied by Assembly Memorandum 338-2014. This is a public hearing. If you wish to speak to us on this matter, please come forward. Seeing and hearing no one, public hearing is now closed.
Moved to, second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion on this matter? Seeing and hearing none, please proceed to vote. And that motion carries unanimously. That brings us to item 14D, AO 2014-77, an ordinance amending the zoning map and improving the rezoning of Alaska Industrial Subdivision Block 8, Lot 1, and a portion of Fragment Lot 14A, Mountain View Development Subdivision, Proposed Village at Town Square Subdivision, Lot 1, per plating case S12061-1 from I-1, Light Industrial District, and B3, General Business, District to B3SL, General Business District with special limitations, generally located south of Mountain View Drive and east of Porcupine Drive in Mountain View, brought to us by the Community Development Department. It's accompanied by a summary memorandum 328-2014. This is a public hearing. If you wish to speak to us on this matter, please come forward. Seeing, hearing no one, public hearing is now closed.
Move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Seeing and hearing none, please proceed to vote. And that motion carries unanimously. That brings us to item 14E, Resolution AR 2014-155, a resolution in Anchorage Municipal Assembly approving the location of a drive-through restaurant per AO 2001-24S AA on Tract 4, the Alaska Village Subdivision, Plat 2006-169, Zoned B3SL, General Business District with special limitations, with the Creekside Business Planned Unit Development, generally located at the southeast corner of DeBar Road and Creekside Center Drive in Anchorage, the Northeast Community Council area. This is case 2014-44, brought to us by the Community Development Department. It's accompanied by Assembly Memorandum 306-2014. This is a public hearing. If you should wish to speak to us on this matter, please come forward. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. My name is Christy Wood, and I am here tonight on behalf of the Northeast Community Council. We, in general, are not supporting this drive-through restaurant simply because this area is zoned as a town center, and a pedestrian-friendly environment and walkability is very important to a town center environment. There's also a middle school right close to the property, Begich Middle School. And so what we're concerned about is increasing the amount of motor vehicular traffic in this area where you're already trying to generate pedestrians and we've already got kids walking around. Now, I've been talking with the developer this evening, and he has shared some information with me that has alleviated some of our concerns. For example, it's a very long lease, 25 years. And so one of our biggest worries is that if we allow this drive-through, what happens when the current tenant moves out? What is to prevent another tenant with even higher volumes of motor vehicle traffic from coming in? For example, what prevents it from being a McDonald's or a Burger King someday, which from our point of view would be a serious safety concern, because if the current tenant remains a Starbucks with a fairly low volume of motor vehicles, that's really not a big deal. But if we get a McDonald's in there where the amount of vehicular traffic just skyrockets, again, you're right next to a school, it's a pedestrian-friendly environment, at that point, it becomes a safety concern. So in general, the Northeast Community Council has a lot of concerns about establishing a drive-through in an area that's supposed to be a pedestrian-friendly zone. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wood. Mr. Honeman has a question for you before you run off.
Thanks for coming down, Christy. And I, too, had the same. I remember the presentation several months back about that the design intended was they were going to build the building on a speculation. It was a speculation restaurant. They had no idea who it was that would be the customer or the tenant in the property. But I, too, have learned that Starbucks, and you're saying that they're saying that they might have like a long-term lease?
It's a long-term lease, and that did alleviate a lot of our concerns. Our other big concern was, were they changing any of the ingresses and egresses in terms of traffic flow? For example, punching another access in from DeBar. They are not. Right. And so as long as they stick with that and make no changes to the traffic flow, that again alleviates some of our concerns. But I still don't feel very comfortable with allowing a drive-through in what's supposed to be a pedestrian-friendly zone. I am sympathetic to the developer. I know they've been sitting on the property for 6 years. We'd love to see it developed ourselves. Sure. But does it have to have a drive-through? So that's our existing concern. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wood. I see no further questions.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who wishes to speak to us on this matter? Seeing and hearing none, the public hearing is now closed. What is the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Mr. Honeman?
Yeah, I'd like to speak to Ms. Wood brought up the community's concern. She sits on the board for Northeast Community Council. And I recall at their last meeting, they actually had a resolution opposing a fast food type restaurant like Carl's Jr., Dairy Queen, McDonald's, things like that. Right around that area, there are at least 4 other restaurants, and some of them are fast food drive-through as well. Not to mention that there's a Subway inside Walmart, and then Fred Meyer has its own deli. So the concern was because they're right across the street from the middle school, that there'd be a lot of kids running back and forth between a fairly busy roadway and perhaps not making the wisest of choices with their time. But I do believe the Starbucks, and talking to numerous constituents in the community, that the Starbucks is what is intended now at this time to go on that property, and I think it actually fits fairly well. There used to be a drive-through trailer hut that you notice at the corner of DeBar and Muldoon, and that has since gone away. So this would fit pretty well in that community, and I think it lends to someone walking in as well as, I mean, if you've seen some of the Starbucks, you can actually park and walk in, have meetings and such. So I think it fits fairly well in the community, and from what I've heard, and then tonight I just learned from Ms. Wood that a 25-year lease, I think that really takes away a lot of concerns. So I'd urge support.
Thank you, Mr. Honeman. Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to echo several things that my colleague from East Anchorage said. The fact that it's not a fast food drive-through, we were concerned that the middle school students might be not eating quite as healthily if there was a drive-through within walking distance when they got out of school. I mean, most of them would have to pass there on their way home. We feel that the Starbucks is a much better choice for that spot, and the fact that they're not going to be punching an exit onto DeBar Road is an additional plus. So I'm going to be supporting this, and I would encourage my colleagues to support it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. I see no one else in queue. Please proceed to vote. And that motion carries unanimously.
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to move to change the order of the day to take up items 14G through I prior to E.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Could you please press your buttons? Very good. Is there an objection to basically moving 14E to the bottom of our agenda? Or sorry, 14F to the bottom of the agenda. Seeing and hearing no objection, that motion carries. That brings us to item 14G, AR 2014-167, and we'll get through these things quickly, folks, don't worry. A resolution, Municipality of Anchorage, appropriating $1,118,859 as a contribution approved by in the 2014 general operating budget from the Eagle River Chugiak Parks and Recreation Service Area Fund 162, Parks and Recreation Department, to the Eagle River Chugiak Parks and Recreation Service Area Capital Improvement Project Fund 462, brought to us by the Parks and Recreation Department for Capital Maintenance Improvements. That's accompanied by Assembly Memorandum 339-2014. This is a public hearing. If you wish to speak to us on this matter, please come forward. Welcome, sir.
Hi. This doesn't speak to this issue, but I couldn't hear you. I have a hearing device that doesn't work. Somebody in that thing gave it to me, but it doesn't work. And I was wondering what you said about 14F.
We're going to get to it in about 5 minutes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing and hearing no one else who wishes to speak to us on item 14G, the public hearing is now closed.
Move to approve. Second.
Moved and second. Is there discussion? Seeing and hearing none, please proceed to vote. And that motion carries unanimously. That brings us to item 14H, AR 2014-168, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage appropriating $292,140 to the State Direct Federal Pass-Through Grants Fund 231 as an Alaska Community Transit Reimbursable Grant Project Agreement.
Let's try this. Waive reading, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. This is a public hearing on some road money. If you wish to speak to us on this matter, please come forward at this time. Seeing and hearing no one, the public hearing is now closed. What is the wish of the body?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Seeing and hearing none, please proceed to vote. And that motion carries unanimously. That brings us to item 14I, AR 2014-171, resolution appropriating $250,000 of the Alaska Center for Performing Arts Capital Reserve account revenues within the area-wide General Capital Improvement Fund, 401, for facility improvements at ACPA in the Office of Municipal Manager. This is accompanied by Assembly Memorandum 358-2014. This is a public hearing. If you wish to speak to us on this matter, please come forward. Seeing and hearing no one, the public hearing is now closed.
Move to approve.
It's moved and seconded. Is there anybody wish to speak to us on this matter? Seeing and hearing none, please proceed to vote. That carries unanimously. Ms. Harbour, thank you for spending some time with us this evening. Have a nice rest of your evening. That brings us back to item 14F. This is Anchorage Ordinance 2014-83, an ordinance authorizing a land use permit of municipal property to Midnight Moon Company, Incorporated, doing business as the Rustic Goat Restaurant. Approval of a conditional use permit for off-street parking on municipal property, legally described as lots 7Q, 8Q, 9Q, 10Q, and 11Q, Block Q, Woodland Park Subdivision, and waiving the Planning and Zoning Commission review. Brought to us by the Real Estate Department and accompanied by Assembly Memorandum 362-2014. This is a public hearing. If you wish to speak to us, please come forward this time. Is that all?
Let the parade begin.
And folks,
Mr. Chair.
Just one second. Folks, you don't all have to stand the whole time. We got lots of nice seats in front, so if you want to sit down and wait, no big deal, but come on down and get the good seats. We'll hear you all, I promise. Sir, with that, please proceed.
Mr. Chair, Assembly members, Mr. Mayor, Anchorage citizens. I'm Bob Curtis Johnson, resident of Turnagain since 1983, and I'm here to speak about this proposed ordinance and basically to speak up in favor of public land and parks and open space. I raised my daughter on the west side. We biked and played games and frisbeed right on that property that's in discussion right now. It's not just a vacant lot. It's actually a lovely little swath of green belt, and it's considered that by the residents of the neighborhood. People who enjoy the overpass also use that, and it's a vital buffer insulating the neighborhood from west northern lights. Some in the chamber here might know me as a facilitator for the Neighbors for a Safe Community, the 35th and McCrae group that successfully worked with the municipality for 3 years to reduce the impacts on the neighborhood just to the south. On 35th and McCrae, and that plan was also approved by the Turnagain Community Council before we worked on it to get it reduced. They do good work there, but there's also more voices in the community. When I heard there was a plan to place a restaurant on the former Chevron, that's a former Chevron site right there, my first thought was, where are people going to park? And when I heard that they were replacing parking with income property, I was dumbfounded, basically. There's nothing but residential in that neighborhood. I'm not sure what the mixed use was in that concept. Now that the obvious and foreseeable result has occurred, we're considering taking grass and parkland. I consider it park. I know it's technically municipal land. And 2020, Anchorage 2020, tells us that we're going to have to solve these issues multiple times as the city continues to grow. We need to decide how businesses are going to impact residential neighborhoods. I've lived in many cities. Oftentimes it's 4 or 5 streets deep people are parking in and walking to popular residential or business areas nearby. We have to solve that. We have to make that decision. I will just briefly say that we support the business. We support the activity there. It is an attractive venue, but I think they can do a reduced business operation there and still be profitable. I also think that we, in the residential area there, we can make some changes as well. I think we need to take Turnagain and we need to make it a no parking zone completely. That's coming. Everybody knows that's coming in the next few years here as Turnagain gets developed. It's not likely to remain a parking area. So we might as well do that right now and put safety at the top of the list. But I don't think we should sacrifice the park for safety. We can also take some of these nearby neighborhoods and we can make them parking on one side only. There's other things that can be done, and I really ask everyone to go back and think about this some more before we just go for the quick solution here. Once that's paved, it will remain paved, and I'm sure of that. Thank you for your time. Any questions?
There is, Mr. Curtis Johnson. Ms. Domboski has a question for you.
Oh, sure.
I'm over here. Thank you so much. You may have just with your last statement answered my question. I personally have not driven out there, but I've talked to a number of people that live in that area, and they keep saying safety is a problem because there's cars parked everywhere. So my question was going to be, shouldn't safety be the paramount number one driving factor? And you just said parking, safety shouldn't be put above parkland? Is that what I just
I
heard
didn't
you
say
say?
safety shouldn't be, but people have been walking along Turnigan for as long as I've lived there, 30 years, whatever it is. The residents use that as a commute, and there's no sidewalks. So people have been walking on the roadway forever. So if safety was primary, it would have been dealt with long before this.
Okay,
We know
let me
it's- yeah.
change my question just a little.
Sure.
Because I don't think I articulated it very well.
Yeah.
Considering where we're at today, you have a business that obviously is very popular amongst the neighborhood because they're very busy.
Mhm.
So considering that, and there's cars parked all along the road,
Yes.
how can you articulate to me this is not a good solution, considering safety is paramount? I mean, I'm trying to get you to convince me.
There's other ways to approach it. You could instantly make Turnigan a no parking zone. You could do that with quick signage. It would take a day or two to implement with some posts and some signs. And then you can, the business owners can start to deal with it too. Just because they're there doesn't mean they automatically get a free rein to operate at 100% capacity if it's negatively impacting safety.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I see no further questions, sir. Thank you. Ma'am?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Assembly. My name is Vicki Russell, R-U-S-S-E-L-L. I have lived for 36 years at 3000 West 29th Avenue, excuse me. I should know that. I am here to speak because I'm very ambivalent about this resolution. I testified against the zoning exemption for this 2.5 years ago when it went before the Planning and Zoning Commission. At that time, I predicted all of the problems that we are seeing now with the opening of the Rustic Goat. I have since then, at that time I contacted Ms. Drummond, who was a member of the Assembly. Since then I have contacted Ms. Elvie Gray Jackson, Mr. Steele, and Mr. Honeman about the problems in the neighborhood engendered by the parking and traffic from the Rustic Goat. I have attended the Turnigan Community Council for the past 4 months speaking about this issue. I have, which I will give you later, a list of all of the problems that I see with this from the opening of the Rustic Goat and possible solutions because I was a debate coach for 29 years. I think that you can solve some of the parking problems by building this parking lot, but the traffic problems are still going to happen. People use West 29th now as a through street to get to Wisconsin and go west and south of the Rustic Goat rather than going back onto Northern Lights. I have personally observed a car accident from a car leaving the parking lot. I realize that parking is part of the problem, but traffic is also the problem. And finally, I too like the idea of having parkland, and I don't like to see a big, huge parking lot in an area that is beautiful with lilacs and so forth. I also believe that when you consider these kinds of neighborhood establishments, you really need to look at the location they're going to be put in. This was the wrong location for something like this. And one final thing, if you think it's not a big deal, have one built a block from your house.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
I also have pictures if anybody wants to see them.
Much appreciated. Welcome, sir. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Steele, I did not see you. Ma'am, Mr. Steele has a question for you.
Yeah.
Sir, if you could step aside for 1 moment, there's a
Ms.
question
Russell?
for this.
I understand the concerns, and there are a lot of them, and you're saying that traffic is not going to be solved, and I think that's probably true, but it may be decreased because they might come in and out on Tudor, but if they have to go into the parking area.
But if they come right off of Northern Lights and then have to make a left-hand turn across northbound traffic into the parking lot, plus all the people who will jaywalk to get across across Turnigan Street to get to the restaurant from the parking lot.
What about the solution of making Jernigan no parking, and isn't that just going to force it into the neighborhoods?
It's on my street, which has already been affected, but it'll be worse affected.
What about parking on one side on the...
Well, I put possible solutions there. The problem is with that end of West 29th is there's 4-plexes and 8-plexes down there, and there's already people parking on the street. So this just adds more onto the street. I go out on Wisconsin, increasing the mileage on my car and my gas prices and my time, because it's so dangerous to go east and turn onto Jernigan Street. I know that some things will be relieved, but frankly, it never should have been built.
I might note that I wasn't on the assembly at that.
I understand. You're not on the Planning and Zoning Commission.
But I agree with you. Something does need to be done, and hopefully we're going to do something. So.
And Mr. Trainee also has a question for you, ma'am.
You envision it being a problem where they want to put those 28-car parking lot trying to walk over to the Rustic Goat because there's no lights in the walkway. You'd be playing dodgeball with the cars coming by on Jernigan.
There's lights at Jernigan and Northern Lights.
Right, but not at Jernigan and this.
And this alleyway, or if they just walk across the grass. And frankly, I've seen so many people walk down the middle of Jernigan Street to get to their cars, not paying attention to traffic. It's hard for me to believe that they would not jaywalk. And the other thing is the Rusty Goat does not allow their employees to park in their parking lot. They have rented some space from one of the neighbors, several of the neighbors, and they use that little parking lot that's in the park area right now. But don't know whether they'll let their people park in their employees park in this new lot. And there are cars that are constantly parked on Jernigan Street 5 days a week for 8 hours a day that I know must be employees. And I've asked them twice not to do that, and it hasn't happened.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate you being here.
And Mr. Peterson also has a question for you. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Vicki?
What?
What?
I'm sorry. Yes, Mr. Peterson.
I was just wondering, I see there's an alleyway here. Are people already parking in the alley? Is parking illegal in the alley?
The alley is unimproved. It's a dirt road. And frankly, it's hard for me to see 2 cars passing in the alley.
Okay.
Especially in the winter.
Thank you, Ms. Russell. Sorry, sir. It took us an extra moment to get to you. Go ahead now.
I'm in no hurry. My name is Bill Wortman, W-O-R-T-M-A-N, and I'm the president of Jernigan Community Council. And I'm probably briefer than my predecessor. Vicki has come to the community council meetings and expressed this and much more. And I praise her for coming. She's identified what the problems are. And I also live in that neighborhood about 3 streets over from her, drive to Jernigan every day. She's quite correct. People are walking down the middle of the street. They have their door open. They're getting out. And they're with little concern of the traffic there. The unintended benefit of this whole thing is people on Jernigan Street aren't driving as fast, and there's less drag racing there. Community Council had their last meeting on the 5th of June and voted 17-1 to support this parking lot. There were some people that agreed with Vicki maybe it shouldn't have been built in the first place. But the reality is today we have a problem and all of us need to do something about it. This parking lot seems to help with the problem. That's it, except I'll leave you with about 4 or 5 years ago, Harry Crawford's wife was hit by a pickup truck with a snow blade on this street in the winter. The winter when there's snow there. Pardon me?
On Christmas Eve.
Christmas Eve. So when the snow's there, it even gets narrower. And questions?
I don't see any, Mr. Wortman, but I appreciate you coming down. Thank you very much. If we
You're
have
welcome.
questions for you later, we'll grab you.
Okay.
And folks, I know this is exciting, but if you could let folks have their 3 minutes to themselves, that'd be helpful. Go ahead.
Oh, there's a time limit?
Yes, sir.
I'll try and make it as clear as I can. I'm Peter Farrar. I've lived there for 35 years in this neighborhood. Besides thinking this is a big mistake to do this and the Rustic Goat was a mistake, my immediate concerns are that when people want to go west out of this parking lot to get onto Northern Lights during breakfast hours and everybody is going north on Turnigan Boulevard to get to Northern Lights to get to work, there's going to be a problem. So if those people then decide to go back down the alley east till they get to Barber Street where they would have to make a right turn and going south, they would come to 29th where there is no stop sign. And also at that particular corner is where the school bus stop picks up the little children every morning to go to Turnigan Elementary. Now those people are going to come by there and they're not going to stop. Somebody's going to get killed. And in reference to that, I would ask you if you know David Blake. I don't think so. David Blake was a little kid who was killed crossing Northern Lights about 30-something years ago, before when Northern Lights was 2 lanes and went over the railroad tracks. And where they have the pedestrian overpass there now, they have a monument to David just for that purpose, because he was killed. And I think this has not been studied adequately for the traffic. So that's one thing. There's also concerns that the long-range planning for Turnigan Street calls for it to be widened and have sidewalks and a bike trail. Where's all that going to go? So we also, the developer here had the opportunity, he could have made an offer on the Marston building or raised shop there to buy them out. You know, you're just giving them the land. I'm a taxpayer. People in the neighborhood are totally against this. And once they get, say, past 29th, if they don't kill a kid, then they're going to come to 30th, where there is a stop sign going north and south, but east and west on the 30th Avenue Raceway, there is no stop sign. So people are flying up there, and there's no speed bumps to slow anybody down. So this has not been adequately studied. And, they had where they could park at the Marston building. They said they made arrangements. I walk by there every day. I've never seen a Rustic Goat customer parked in the Marston parking lot. Basically because they have 2 concrete parking blocks blocking the little entrance that would have allowed them to go there. They didn't have a sign that said, hey, you guys could park here. And just last week, just last week, they landscaped that area, so now they'd have to unlandscape it, put up a sign that said, hey, you could park over here now. So I could go on, but thanks very much.
Thank you very much, sir.
Oh, questions?
I don't see any right now, sir. Thank you.
What's that?
I don't see any questions right now. Thank you.
That's too bad.
Welcome, sir.
My name is Jimmy Froelich, and my last name is spelled Froehlich. I have a prepared statement I'll give you when I'm through reading it. Dear Assembly members, thank you for this opportunity to speak about a matter which directly affects me, my family, and my neighbors. I urge you to reject a conditional use permit for an off-street parking lot in the R3 district on municipal property for the Rustic Goat Restaurant, also called the Rustic Goat Bistro. According to a notice of public hearing sent to me just last week, you are considering a permit for the restaurant to use public space for parking for their customers. I have serious concerns about the way this proposal has gone forward with haste and little apparent forethought. Since opening in February, traffic near the restaurant has been a persistent hazard. Restaurant customers have been responsible for numerous near accidents with pedestrians and vehicles. Drivers unfamiliar with the neighborhood park wherever they wish, often illegally, with little regard for driveways, yards, or common sense. Walkers to the nearby bus stop are often forced to walk in the street around illegally parked cars. Many times we experience near misses with cars pulling into traffic or making abrupt U-turns on the side streets. Increased traffic has diminished local children's ability to safely travel and play in the area. Needless to say, traffic in our neighborhood has increased greatly, and we continue to suffer from this poorly planned venture. Many years ago, a green space buffer zone was created by destroying people's homes for an expanded Northern Lights Boulevard. This week, we are asked to comment on the proposal for the restaurant to have access to this common zone for its own parking. By taking the green space and turning it into a parking lot for the benefit of a restaurant seems to me to be favoritism. May I be allowed to petition the Assembly to develop a used car lot or a hot dog stand in the buffer zone? Is the entire green space up for grabs? Coming soon is an upgrade for Turnagain Street. How does this proposal conform to the upgrade? While I realize that increased parking for the restaurant may improve parking for some in the area, I'm not sure it will reduce accidents. I would like to see information to that effect, and so should you. Questions of access, guide barriers, walking and traffic patterns, snow plowing and removal, and landscaping are neither being addressed nor communicated prior to granting this conditional use permit. The timing of this petition, the way in which it is being presented, and past history with the Rustic Goat does not give me confidence that this is anything more than a done deal benefiting one business at the further expense of the neighborhood. This plan will not solve the traffic issues mentioned. I urge you to reject this petition and allow time to consider several alternatives to grabbing municipal land for the benefit of just one entity. We were told the restaurant would encourage carpooling, walking, biking, and bus riding to the restaurant. It would take an education effort, but it would result in more favorable press and a better reputation for the restaurant. Please do not approve this proposal until more effort is spent to develop a sensible plan.
Thank you, Mr. Froelich. You could bring your statement forward and give it to the clerk. She can distribute it for us. Welcome, ma'am.
My name is Heather Strachan, S-T-R-A-C-H-A-N. My family moved here 1946. My grandfather opened the Club Paris. My grandmother was a nurse at Providence her whole life. I grew up, I moved to that neighborhood. I was born 1967. That area, what's the vision for Turnagain by the Sea is my question. Is our vision, it's not Spenard, it's not downtown. We don't have bars open until people drinking and parking in alleyways. This sounds like I live in Spenard now. I'd like my own parking lot if you could turn the green belt behind my house. I got some businesses I could put up there. I've watched children learn to park on that green. I've watched so many children learn to walk, ride bikes, learn to park the car. My children have grown up using this space over there. Otherwise we go down to Turnagain Park, the baseball fields, which you've also already ruined because you punched a road through, and we got people putting keggers down there 24/7 all summer long. We have people driving through this neighborhood. My neighborhood was one of the most beautiful walk neighborhoods in this town. I'm not sure what your vision is. I want to keep my neighborhood. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Greetings, sir. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Brett Scruton, S-C-R-U-T-O-N. I've been a resident of the neighborhood my entire life, so 23 years. Driving here about, 40 minutes ago, the parking was backed between 29th and 30th, basically. And I looked at the bike rack as I was driving past, and every single slot on the bike rack was filled with a bike, and there were still people trying to park and get in. Obviously, we've heard testimony before that this is a problem. I'm kind of caught up on whether I want the parking lot or not, because I would hate to get rid of that park, like many people before have said, but I also appreciate the safety. The problem is with this particular amendment is that I think it sets a dangerous precedent. When we have businesses that are poorly planned coming in, and then the assembly and the municipality and taxpayers have to go and clean up this mess. In particular, I think the idea is it's great to have a restaurant, but the problem is it's not a restaurant for the neighborhood. The vast majority of people who go to this restaurant are from other neighborhoods, and they come and park in our neighborhood. It makes it dangerous for us, whether it's me riding my bike or driving my car. There's been a few near misses with traffic shenanigans, basically. So I think that this is a huge problem, and I would like to look for other solutions. I myself cannot produce one beyond this parking lot thing. I see the the problems the Assembly is now facing with this. But I think we should keep in mind when we put restaurants or businesses in Anchorage, are the people from that community going to go to that business? Because when I walk from my house over the Rustic Goat and I can't get a seat, I walk back to my house. That's why I think you see the majority of people who go to the Rustic Goat aren't from the neighborhood. And obviously we've been hearing testimony from people within the neighborhood who actually find this entire situation problematic. So I would just like the Assembly to consider whether you pass this or not today, to think about the precedent it sets for other businesses. Can businesses just put property in restaurants and different neighborhoods, and then if there's a parking problem, look to the Assembly for help? Please consider.
Thank you, sir. Welcome.
Honorable Mayor, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the Assembly, thank you for hearing me. I am a resident of the Turnagain Street.
I'm sorry, sir. Could you tell us your name?
Oh, I'm sorry, Patrick Muller, M-U-L-L-E-R.
Thank you, Mr. Muller.
And again, I am a resident of the Turnagain Street area, 30th and Turnagain. And though I have not lived in the area as long as some of these folks have, I have seen an issue as well. 100% of the time, every day of the week that people are parked on that street, I have to cross the double yellow lines to get around them. I have pictures of families walking down the middle of the street, their kids held by the hands of their parents, in which they could let go at any time, run away and get hit by a car. I think that I am opposed to this parking lot, that I believe it'll only create more business for them, in which people still park down Turnagain Street once that lot is full. There's supposed to be an allotment of so many customers in the building for number of parking spaces. If you increase the number of parking spaces, only more people are going to come. People are already crowding the streets of Turnagain. Again, I reiterate, more people are going to park down Turnagain Street, creating hazards. I put calls into the municipality as soon as to the police department as soon as this place opened, and I noticed that there was issues on the street with parking. I spoke to the right-of-way, the Muni right-of-way department, and they have claimed that it is a police problem, that it is illegal to park on Turnagain Street. I have the recording that the lady left on my phone. I do have the pictures as well of the parking situations on Turnagain Street. Again, I do not believe that making this parking lot is going to solve any issues. I believe that the only result, and again, it's my own opinion, is to have the business move, period. That's the only thing that's going to keep the residents safe in that area, especially the children. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Muller.
Yes.
There's no questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ma'am, welcome.
Hi, thank you. My name is Roxanne O'Connor. I, too, am a resident on the corner of 30th and Turnagain Street. We've lived there about 2 years, and since the opening of the establishment, there has been a dramatic increase in the parking situation and traffic safety issues. I am opposed to the development of a parking lot or permit use of the parking lot in that greenbelt space. I'm not against development and growth. It's not wrong for a business to try to improve itself, but unfortunately, with the permit use of that parking space, we are only going to encourage more business in that residential area. It is a residential area. Like a parent who is raising a child that is a teenager, you set boundaries, you set limits, you allow them a certain parameter to work with. The Rustic Goat had that parameter with the building lot that they were provided. And unfortunately, they have to work within their means and work within their limit. And if their parking space only allows them an occupancy of 60 patrons in that building, so be it. Increasing parking to allow for this is not acceptable. It is only going to increase our problem and increase the safety factors involved. And then I see that there is a 2-year extension on the lease permit use, which brings us to 9 years. And what then? The business has now thrived and has increased, and then now they need that parking space. So what do you do at that point? Do you take it back from them, or you then allow them to continue using that space, and we end up with the issues again with our safety?
Thank you very much, Ms. O'Connor. I don't see any questions, but would you kindly put the microphone down on the table next to you before you walk away? Thank you so much.
Thank you. This for me.
Welcome, ma'am.
Okay, let me.
It's okay. Take your time.
My name is Ellen Kubiak. A lot of people in the area know me. I live on West 29th. I've lived there for 27 years. I lived there when the young boy was killed on Northern Lights. I think that it is a definite situation where there is, we hear it off of our bedroom window, the screeching, the sirens, the ambulances, and I hope to God I don't see all of you or any of you at the funeral of the next child that is killed due to that inadequate being of the rustic goat. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kubiak. Welcome, ma'am.
My name is Liz Smith. I own the fourplex right on the corner of 29th and Turnagain. I have cars parked in front of my house every single day starting at 6 a.m. I love the restaurant. I frequent there probably daily. The restaurant's already built, so we've got to build the parking lot. That's all there is to it. But before the parking lot gets built, no parking signs need to go on Turnagain. You cannot pull out. You pull out into oncoming traffic off of Tenderfoot or 29th every day. And I think the Rustic Goat needs to make their employees park in that Marston parking lot where nobody parks. Because at 6 a.m., all the way up to Tenderfoot, there's already 3 cars. I come home every day from work. Some days I have towed 5 cars from my parking lot in one day. So I'm in favor for the parking lot. I think it's a great idea that the parking lot has a sidewalk that's going to go all the way up to the light, so people will cross at the light. I think they should put a little fence up there to keep people walking across the grass, to walk across Turnagain. But before the parking lot even gets built, no parking signs need to go up.
Thank you very much. Welcome, sir.
Hi. My name is John Jones. Excuse me. I've lived in the area off and on for 35 years. In the house that I live in now, I've lived there since 1989, which is in back next to where they want to put this parking lot. And I don't have the time, and you don't want to hear all the things that happen back there, but I'll tell you, with this parking lot you people propose, not you people, but the builder, it's just going to increase the problem. And it's all been said before, but all I want to say is, how did it get this far? With people that are supposed to be intelligent and be able to spot things out and see how to plan a city, how did they let this get this far? We've tried to have voices at the meetings before it all started, and it was just walked over. So I don't have anything else to say. I just wish that you guys would get it together.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Welcome, sir.
Honorable Mayor, Honorable Assemblyman, Honorable Chair. Thank you. My name is Richard Porter. I'm 2709 West 29th. You guys get an opportunity to look at your maps. You guys will see the driveway that's proposed for the entrance of the parking lot is right and adjacent to mine. So I also work in local government, so I understand the complexities that you guys are looking at this with. You know, when a kid comes home with a drinking problem, or your son or your daughter comes home with a drinking problem, you don't say, well, just drink at home. That's not going to solve the problem. And I believe that this won't solve the problem, that this will just be a problem compounding a problem, that we've made a bunch of mistakes, and we should probably figure out what we're going to do to fix that. And this is definitely not it. From a road standpoint and a safety standpoint, it won't decrease traffic, it will increase traffic. When you look at the width of the road that's proposed for the entrance of it, it's already been mentioned that it's one lane. So if I got people coming in and out, how do I even get out of my house? Even if I take a right from there, it's still going to be very difficult. It's a dirt road with only one lane going into this. I don't see how that's going to work. Also, when I look at it at a housing standpoint and I see Lot 7Q, 8Q, 9Q, 10Q, and 11Q proposed, it just absolutely bewilders me when a good part of this meeting is talking about housing crisis, and these aren't even considered for housing, they're considered for parking lots. How does that make it a better neighborhood? I guess there's a lot of things that I don't understand here. That's why we elected you guys all to help deal with these problems, and I sure appreciate your time. One thing in looking at that and proposed is that we definitely need to decrease the traffic here. And how do we do that? How many seats are there? They say there's 84. If there's 84 seats that was proposed, what was the parking and how does that match up? Do those even match up? Now when it comes winter time and the winter drops a bunch of snow and narrows that road, you're going to have even more problems. In looking at this, I guess I would like to propose a couple of solutions, and they might be out there. There's been a lot of drinking, and I'm not going to judge. I like I'm sure that many of you, I know I've seen some of you guys around, enjoy yours also. There's two kinds of crazy. A guy gets all crazy, rubs himself down with a bunch of stuff, and runs around outside. The second is he does it in your house. The first one's kind of funny, but the second one you kind of have to deal with. So you're proposing for taking this problem, and you're taking that problem and now putting it directly in my backyard. So excuse me for seeming kind of a tad bit selfish. So to be able to propose a solution is to decrease or even take away the beer and wine license of Rustic Goat. And if that doesn't work, there's a great place downtown called Platinum Jacks that's closed down that they can move there. Thank you very much.
Welcome, sir.
Hi, I'm Robert Bingham, B-I-N-G-H-A-M. Families lived in the area since '79, attended Turnagain Elementary, went to Cub Scouts in that area, so hung out there a lot back whenever there were actual and other commercial properties in the land and on the street. As it is now, I think the only other one is the building that's referred to as the Marston Building, or at one time was also the Turnagain by the Sea, which is owned by my father. I know a few people have complained about the parking. My father and the owners have reached an arrangement where the people can park on the side of the building faced by Northern Lights, and that holds like 5 to 6 cars. And the only problem is that for people coming from the east side, they'd have to do the U-turn at Wisconsin. And I know for the people parking along the Turnagain, I've seen a lot of people start driving down there this summer not knowing that they were also doing the McRae Road improvements further down, and they've like just gone to sudden stops and gotten completely lost. So I don't know if they need to either publicize it before, but I've been looking forward to actually having the restaurant in the area to visit, but I haven't actually done it. But I think they really need to have more time to figure out the parking situation. I know my parents did not get the notice about this until yesterday, and if they could see about giving more time beforehand to let people in the
areas affected have the notification, that'd be nice.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bingham. Welcome, sir.
Thanks for hearing me. My name is James Brooks. I'm the owner and developer of the site that's causing all of this passionate problems. There's a problem there for sure, and I can never in a million years would have envisioned it. My background is, I grew up on Boniface and Tudor when it was both dirt roads. My father actually worked for Brooke Marston and ran his property management firm, and so in high school I would go into Chuck Bingham's property. I know the site well. I live in Turnagain. I love Turnagain. And there's an amazing amount of irony that I hear here tonight, and a lot of, I think, bad information. The irony is this project was in the process for 20 years. As Title 21 was being developed, the community vetted what they wanted on this site. So if you look at it, they've got two sites, Wisconsin and Northern Lights, Turnagain Street and Northern Lights, for commercial. So 9 years ago, I contacted Tim Gravel at Kaladi Brothers, and I said, hey, if we buy this site and rezone it, which is what this community wants, can we do a coffee shop? And so what's funny about this is we came in here and we said, we went to the community council, we went to everyone. I created a website before I even bought the property, and I said, what do you guys want to do here? They didn't want the traffic for a coffee shop. Well, they wanted a sit-down restaurant. To get a sit-down restaurant, you have to have a kitchen. In order to make this whole thing work, we had to have the right parking. So the parking was approved. We picked up additional parking from the Binghams, from Ray's. We're taking care of the parking that's down on the open space. The solution that's being proposed is the perfect solution. I've been to the Turnagain Street planning sessions, explaining how they're going to widen it, where they're going to put infrastructure, how we're going to get access to make it work. So let's back up a little bit. What we're trying to do here is, as our city gets more dense, we need better living. We need integrated mixed-use developments, community-based, walkable places. I'm a member of the Urban Land Institute. I went to the best real estate school in the country. I'm bringing my skill sets back up here to Alaska to say, how do I take this site and make it so that it gets embraced by the community? And the irony is it has been. It's incredible. You guys go to this property, people love it. We built it with old growth Douglas fir timbers from Kenai. The site has got, the apartments have leased up. It's working out beyond what our expectations were. So now we've got a problem. So now we get to deal with this problem. But it's a deal that's a growth of us as a community. We're trying to figure out how to make this city more livable. And if you don't, and so if you look at the entitlement that you guys passed when we did this, it's building this as a mixed-use pilot program. Pilot means we learn, so the learning is solving this problem. And so I'm here right now to say, okay, I think this is, and when I went to the planning department meetings on what we do at Turnagain Street, I drew in on the thing, put parking on this site. It's a safety valve. It doesn't create more traffic there. That traffic's going to go there, but it's just going to make it a safer place to be with better quality, access.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. There's a couple of questions for you. Folks? Hey, guys. I would ask everyone be respectful of each other's opinions. I understand you may not agree with Mr. Brooks, but please give him common courtesy. Ms. Domboski.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Brooks, for coming, because I was dying to talk to you. And I've seen some of the TV commercials, so I know how many trips you made to the assembly. But as I'm looking at this from, somebody from the north side of the community, how robust was the discussion at Planning and Zoning when you did this about the parking adequacy? I know it meets the minimums of Title 21. However, to me, I look at this almost like maybe it's just because you were more successful than you anticipated. But honestly, when I hear about the traffic, it feels to me like we failed at the planning level. How Mr. Jones put it, how did we get this far?
And that's what I was trying to explain. How we got this far, and we were engaged in this entitlement process for a long time. There was a 6-month period where I've designed this project multiple times. So originally, it was a 12-plex with a 2,500 square foot restaurant. As we reduced the amount of parking to accommodate the restaurant, we reduced the number of units. So now I've got 6 units. It was originally, I think we could have had somewhere between 12 and 18 units on the place. But like I said, we wanted to have a place where people in the neighborhood could go meet. So what we did is we started reducing within the kind of more of a 50-50 residential commercial level, reduce the residential to make room for the commercial, and it was clearly just to make room for the parking. Right now the parking is set up so that in the summertime, when the expectation is, and as you see it, the bike racks are full a lot of the times on the weekends and evenings, that we got extra seating on the deck. In the wintertime, that goes away, so we go back down to a lower seating level. So the seating and the parking was a big piece of this discussion. And like I said, this is a pilot project. And we don't want this. We want this to be safe and embraced by the community, but we've got to learn how to do this. And so the fact that it's become so successful is a wonderful thing. But I think this solution, which by the way, is being paid for by the tenant.
Right.
Is being improved by the tenant. It's not taxpayer dollars.
Let me follow up with a second question, if I may, because I think you've given me context of what I was looking for. The second question that I have, there's a lot of discussion about this Marston parking lot. Have you attempted to enter negotiations with possibly a parking agreement with that parking lot owner to see if maybe that would be opened up? And some of the comments that the residents are saying about maybe having your tenants park over there. Can you address those?
Yeah, the way that it is right now is there is an agreement with Mr. Bingham to use parking, and he's been amazingly cooperative and sympathetic to the situation. Like originally he was going to allow parking, and like his son said, somewhere around 6 to 8 parking spaces or so on the north end of his building after 4 o'clock. And since then he's come there and he's just said, the parking is available, longer hours during the daytime. Ray is the same way. If you look in front of Ray's building, it's Rustic Goat employee parking. Okay, so Tim also in the management there encourages the employees to park down off of off of the alleyway in the right-of-way area right now. So right now that has been set up.
Okay.
And one other thing, the part that there is, and I love green space as much as anyone, place to walk your dog and stuff. You got to understand, this is only 13% of that green space. We're not asking to take 100% of the green space. Where the bridge crosses, there's a lot more green space down there.
Yeah. Okay.
Anything
That
else?
answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Holloman.
Mr. Brooks, so I hear what you're saying. You're saying the tenants yourself pays for this parking lot, and then, of course, it'd be a lease to the city. It pays back out, right? Is that's what you're proposing?
I mean, the proposed, I think, correct. I mean, the way that I've read it is that, they're paying for all the improvements of the parking lot, maintaining all of the mature growth that's there, and paying, I think, what is a very fair lease rate on that space. So there is no cost.
So if there were a compromise and had, like, if you look up the Park Strip, for instance, on the 10th Avenue side of Park Strip or 11th Avenue, you see diagonal parking at the curb, if you will, or the sidewalk. And so if there were a compromise on that unimproved alley off, which basically is to the north of 29th, and that were paid for by the tenants, if you will, so that you could have that available to you during your business hours, and then the public could use it on other off hours or something like that. I guess I'm asking, we hear people coming in with their concerns and their complaints. I'm asking for solutions.
Yeah, no.
Come with one proposal. Are there an alternative proposal?
I don't think so. That the alleyway is fairly narrow. I think that the proposal that's been put forward is the solution to this, to the parking need. I mean, putting in, like what you're saying, in kind of parallel or a diagonal parking line thing, I don't think there's enough room there. But the other thing is the way they've integrated the sidewalks in that parking area over to the intersection so they can safely cross the road. That's a very important piece of that.
You could do the same thing by widening the alley and making it wide enough for that.
Sure.
On that side, you'd have to replace all them.
Okay, but I think we're starting to get into debate, so I'm going to...
No, I'm just asking if we had other proposals besides just this one.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I think I heard the answer was there's
No.
none other... Okay. Ms. Johnston.
Well, it is a little ironic, isn't it?
It is.
I did suggest that you wait until after Title 21. You didn't. So here we are. And one of your requests was to have a walkable mixed-use facility, right? And a bikeable and a skiable. And so far your patronage hasn't been as much walkable, skiable, bikeable. or has it?
It has been. You know what? I was there, I go there fairly regularly, and I see, yesterday I saw Jim Lotzfeld.
Folks,
please.
Sorry. I know there's a lot of strong feelings, but please, I need you to exercise appropriate decorum, okay? Mr. Brooks, could you please continue?
No, you know what? That's been I've actually, I speak to a lot of people that are just psyched to have a place to walk to. And if you go there in the morning, I can give you names of the people that walk there regularly. Like I said, on the way here, early this morning I saw Jim Lotzfeld, who I know lives at least a quarter mile to a half mile away. He'd walk there. There's a woman, she's worked with my wife, she's a judge that lives in the area. She walks there every morning. The people, every morning you'll see people walking and biking there.
So my question is, lunchtime and dinner, is that when you have the biggest problem as far as parking?
You know, I most likely, I mean, I don't manage it, but have to, probably Tim would have a better sense of that.
And just a sort of out of the box, has Rusty Goat ever thought of doing incentives for getting there other than by car?
Yeah, you know, I've talked to Tim about that, and, you know, they've discussed a number of incentives to just continue to encourage the community to walk.
Okay, thank you.
I see no further questions, Mr. Brooks.
Right, thank you very much.
Ladies, come on forward. Welcome. Thank you for being so patient.
Well, I just want to, I'm Nancy Crew, and I live on West 29th, and I don't know quite how to say, I think you've made a mistake putting it there. It's a quiet community of independent people, but it's a small streets. All the streets are narrow. When cars park on 29th, or when they park on Turnagain, you are forcing other cars to drive in the middle of the street. When I try to come off of 29th, if I try to go down to Turnagain and get off, there's no way I can see. I cannot see. If I get my car lined up enough to see where the Rusty Goat is, I don't know if that car that I can see on Benson coming around going to take Turnagain, or if it went through. I cannot see if anybody's coming off at Northern Lights. There's no way. I cannot see from the other side to see from the broadside. And I have to work out, a little at a time. But I still can't see because my hood is out, but I'm not. My windows aren't. So I have to get to the middle of the street to look. And by then, there's people who come off of there that don't know it's a neighborhood. They come off full bore off the highway, off the Northern Lights and Benson. And then there I am, and I think I can't give that too much attention without looking to the right because I can't see through the cars. Besides that, the wheels, the outside of the car's wheels are on the street. And so when they open up their car door, you're on the bypass part. I've seen people out there coming on there, and I coming home, and they're changing their clothes with the car door open to get in. Maybe they bike, I don't know what they did. But they've got their doors open onto the street. And when they first opened, they had the cars parking right to Benson. And you come off, they're in the head-on side. You come off coming from the east way, and there you freeze. And that forces you into the middle street, which is the turning left for whoever's coming off of there. It's a three-car width for exiting. But, of course, they got tagged on that little tiny, this width of the Rusty Goat building itself. And then the little ones, the children, we're going to be soon starting school. And the kids, they can't see any easier than anybody of us can. And kids take chances. And and then our street, 29th, has become a throughway for people that are parked along there, and 30th and the next 31st. Everybody that wants to get toward the Wisconsin side or something, they're going to go west, and so they're going to go use those side streets, and they're not wide. They're not wide. Even if they do upgrade the things, how much land can they take off of the people? So while those cars are parked there, the children have to walk, the adults have to walk in the street, because you can't crawl over the car that's parked up to some building or something, or some little dirt pile.
Thank you, Ms.
Kroon.
Could you spell your last name for us? We didn't quite hear it.
Pardon?
Could you spell your last name for us, please? Spell your last name.
Kroon, Kroon.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kroon.
And all I can say is if there's something critical happens through all of this condition, without people planning, why don't the whole bunch of you go when you're going to decide something like this? Go spend some time in those areas. It's an independent area of many, I've been there since 1981.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
So you see the difference. But all I could say is if there's something serious happens, I think there's going to be a lot of us standing beside and behind the person who may have to put up a lawsuit against this or something. And hopefully none of them do. Hopefully nothing like that happens. But
Thank you, ma'am.
that's as much as I feel like saying.
Welcome, ma'am.
Hi. Good evening. My name is Yasa Vartanian. This is the first time I've used a mic, so I apologize if I'm a little shaky here.
You'll do fine.
I've been a homeowner for the past 15 years, and I'm a lifelong born and raised Anchorage resident in Spenard and ended up buying a house in Turnagain. I was a supporter of the Rustic Goat. I was very excited when I found out Kaladi Brothers was going to own this building and build upon the old Chevron gas station lot. And it was just an eyesore of drivers cutting through this business to get access to their apartment building next door. I do agree that parking in the parallel parking along the streets of Turnagain is a risk and hazardous for the children and pedestrians walking along the road there. What I ask is if anyone from Rustic Goat or the Assembly, I'm not sure how this process goes, but I wanted to know if anyone has benchmarked other neighborhoods with restaurants. I'm talking about Jewel Lake, Mountain View, Spenard, and Muldoon, how has traffic has become a problem and what they did to alleviate their, pedestrian walkways out there. I do agree that the peak demand for parking spaces is at capacity in the morning. When I say in the morning, it's mostly just people grabbing a cup of coffee. They do parallel park. I have seen that happen. And there's access in the restaurant parking. For some reason, they don't park in the parking lot. They'll park on the street. It was more busier at lunch for about 2 hours and more so in the evening. That's just what I've noticed. I'm just 2 doors down. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome, ma'am, and thank you for your patience.
Oh, thank you. My name's Melinda Fost. I have lived in the neighborhood for 50 years. I own and operate a small business in this community. I also own 2 properties in the neighborhood, as well as I live in the neighborhood. My family also owns another couple of properties in the neighborhood that we jointly own. My concern is, everyone has stated things quite well. It's a serious problem. I love the Rustic Goat being there. I think it brings depth and livability to the neighborhood. I'm opposed to taking away the green space to accommodate the growth of that business. I use that green space. Everyone uses that green space. I don't see that as a viable solution. It may remove some of the cars from turning in or the outlying arteries that people are parking on. It's limited. Mr. Brooks said it's not the whole green space, but when is enough enough? I live there. These other people live there. It doesn't solve the problem. When I saw it going in, it's a no-brainer. It was immediately clear to everyone that resides there that it was going to be an issue. I drive a full-size vehicle. I drive up and down Turnagain to take care of my properties, to attend to my small business in the community. I usually get to my business at 4 in the morning. People at the Rustic Goat start showing up at 6 a.m., and it doesn't stop until 11 p.m. It's every day.
If you're done, Ms. Foss, Mr. Honeman has a question for you.
Sure.
I've seen you for a number of years, and I know last name Foss is not spelled what we might think it is, if you want to spell it.
Yes, my mother is retired from APD. My ex, whatever.
And you,
still works at APD.
It's FAAS, right?
Correct.
Okay. I know you said you're not in favor of the green space issue. Have you thought of any other ideas? You've been in the area, you know the businesses areas. Have you ever thought of other solutions?
I will have to think about it. Frankly, taking care of my own personal business takes up a lot of my time.
Sure.
I did call Ernie. By the way, you said you were going to call me back, and you did not. Don't appreciate that. I've called the municipality zoning. They're like, well, it's there, it's not my problem, call APD. Well, I have been calling APD. I call them almost every day because I personally drive a big vehicle. I've hit 3 people's mirrors already. When is it going to be somebody's door? When is it going to be somebody getting out of their car? My tenants walk that street to the bus stop, which is on Northern Lights, every day.
Was that on Turnagain or on 29th?
It's on Turnagain.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Foss. I don't see any further questions. Appreciate
Thank
coming
you.
down. Anybody else wish to speak to this matter? Ms. Gleason, welcome.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Assembly. My name is Kathy Gleason, past president of Turnagain Community Council and a current board member. And Turnagain Community Council passed this while I was president, so I feel a certain amount of responsibility and want to see some resolutions that can be done to help this issue. I was going to testify about wanting non-disturbance of the existing landscaping that's there, put into the plat note, the conditional use permit, because it's one thing to put something outside of a tree, but then you dig in where the tree roots are. So I thought that was pretty important, and I wanted to make a note of that. In the context of all the testimony I've heard, I still request that if you approve this, but clearly there's bigger issues that need to be dealt with. Another thing that I wanted to mention was handicap parking. I just spent 10 days with my sister and brother-in-law from California. My brother-in-law walks with a cane, has a handicap parking permit, and so we did an extensive amount of parking in handicap spots the last few days, about 10 days, and closer is better. And so I know there's been some discussion with a Turnagain board member and Mr. Gravel about adding maybe 1 or 2 more handicap parking spaces within the existing lot, so I would ask that you consider that. I did want to clear up a couple of things that were mentioned. The Turnagain Street design, that it has gone through its process that Mr. Brooks referred to, that is very narrow. We recognized it. Planning Department, roads, projects recognize it. There's only one sidewalk, no bike path proposed for that street, even though it's a collector, because we use context-sensitive design initiatives, knowing that there's just not room for a standard collector design there. Also, I think that it's legitimate that we were told at our Turnagain Community Council meeting that green space area that was reserved back in the mid-'80s when Western Lights was widened and the railroad overpass was put in, that was, basically going to be parkland. And there is a parkland sign there, although we were told at our June meeting that's not parkland. So there's a little bit of a discrepancy there. But having said that, it's clear to the neighbors that it's green space and that it's an important green space. I did vote in support of this parking lot proposal when it was presented in June. I still think, as our president stated, that it's there now, and now we have to work on good solutions. And I hope that we can all work together on that. Thank you.
Mr. Steele has a question for you.
I do, Kathy. Thanks for the question. Have you seen the plat of the proposal on that parking?
Yes.
And I think there are notes on that mature vegetation, the vegetation there, the lilac bushes along the alley, and a couple of trees I think that are down there, down on the east end.
Yes.
But so the design is to be of a limited impact on that corner. I mean, it's a big space, and they're taking green space to do it. But you're not going to be able to see much from Northern Lights. And there is a walkway from the parking lot, proposed from the parking lot, directly to the corner to encourage everybody to use the corner and the light, as opposed to just walking across Turnagain. I think I'll do that in debate, but I just wondered if you had seen that. And
yes, I've seen the plan.
We've got a problem, and this is part of the fix, I suspect.
Yeah, we were presented by at our council meeting with the design, and so we had something to look at when we considered it. I guess I might add, though, is this is a real blatant, ugly plug for involvement in community councils. If all of the people that lived in that area would have come to our meeting and expressed concerns the way they have now since this project has been approved and has moved forward and is now operating and now creating all the problems that they say they have anticipated. Vicki Russell is one of them, the exceptions, who did jump in right at the beginning and anticipated. She was a minority at our discussions at our council meetings about this project. And so it's just a lesson to be learned with all the residents of Anchorage. When a project is proposed in your neighborhood, please get involved through your community councils and express your concerns, issues, provide input. It really is a viable way to try and deal with these proposals.
Mr. Trainee has a question for you as well.
Okay.
If you go and look, the sign that says Parkland status is now gone according to the administration.
I'm sorry.
I asked you yesterday, the sign that said Parkland status is now gone.
Oh, that disappeared after 20, 30 years? Okay.
It's now gone, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
And Ms. Domboski?
Hi, Kathy. I just want to double check. What is the speed limit right here in front of Rustic Goat? Do you know? I'm sure you
Western
know.
Lights, it's 35 miles an hour.
It's 35. Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Gleason. Anybody else wish to speak to us this matter? I'm sorry, ma'am. We only let people testify once. I apologize.
My son was hit at the intersection. My dog's been hit, and people drove off after they cracked my son's helmet. This intersections are dangerous.
Welcome, sir.
Ready?
Yeah, it's been a while. Welcome back.
My name is William Harrington, Harrington. First of all, congratulations on the sidewalk project on Northern Lights from this project all the way going east. I understand that's an $800,000 job, which it's a great little sidewalk, but if that's all you get for your $800,000, I can see that there's problems in. You know what I'm saying here? $800,000 for that? Well, okay. Now, what about Turnagain? I heard that we have a plan for Turnagain right now on McCrae. McCrae's undergoing improvements, 2.0 McCrae. And I look forward to Turnagain. I've been driving down Turnagain long before the Rustic Goat was there. I watched with amusement as it was being built. And one of the things that's concerned me over and over and over and over is the people walking in the street, children getting off buses and crossing the street, children walking from the bus home down Turnagain. There is no sidewalk on Turnagain. Cars are always parked where there's supposed to be a sidewalk, but it's been a problem before this would happen. Now it's even a worse problem because you have so many more cars on the street and you have so many more cars parking in what should be designated parking, or designated sidewalk. You've got the bike traffic, skateboard traffic, skateboarders going down Turnagain. I mean, how do you drive around a skateboarder? Well, if someone's coming the other way, you don't. It's a hazardous situation, and I hope that when Turnagain gets upgraded, like it'll be a true upgrade. Also, that I've noticed, and don't know how you're going to solve this problem, but there's an apartment building right down the street on Turnagain on the west side, and those people have been parking their cars there for probably long enough for the owner to declare adverse possession, because those cars are parked out with their bumpers right in the street. There is no sidewalk. They have, I would say, adverse possession because they've been parking there so long. You people, not you personally because y'all weren't around that long, have ignored it, and how are you going to deal with that issue? If all you get for your $800,000 is a little piece of sidewalk, where are you going to move his cars, let alone these other cars? So I would look at that as a part of the problem in this neighborhood. The Rustic Goat, I counted them, has 22 parking places. I don't know what the occupancy is because I haven't been in the place and didn't look at the little fireplace and sign, and from what I understand, you've got summer occupancy and you've got winter occupancy. So apparently, whoever was doing the math at the parking department or at the planning and zoning was figuring, what, 4 people per car? Because I don't know how many people are legally allowed in the Rustic Goat, but how many people per car were you planning when you only gave them 22 parking places and gave them a facility which, as we found out, has been popular? So my opinion of planning and zoning is they need to go back to grade school with their math. On McCrae, they put in a 6-foot wide sidewalk down one side of the street, no sidewalk on the other. That's totally modern and great. It also means that if you live on McCrae and need a place to park, you just park on the sidewalk, because the street is not wide enough for car. There's a double yellow. It's not wide enough for a car in its lane and a car parked. It's just, the math again doesn't work, folks, so people just park on the sidewalk. I've already seen it happen.
Mr. Harrington, can you wrap up, please?
I'll read a quote here. The Turnagain Community Council and the people in the neighborhood didn't want to see a high traffic use. Well, they sure didn't get what they wanted, did they?
Thank you very much.
I do think there's a solution to this, and the solution is Google it. And by that I mean they should buy the building next door that fourplex this lady owns, tear it down and put in a little parking garage. That's what Google does. That's what Zuckerman does. That's what people with money do, is they buy what they need to make what they want. In a final note, before you cut me off, which you're going to in a second, it says right here, and waive Planning and Zoning Commission review. My comment on that is, if you're going to waive Planning and Zoning Commission review, what in the double L are you paying those people for?
Thank you, Mr. Harrington. Does anybody else wish to speak to us in this matter?
Can I have one more minute?
I'm sorry, sir. We give everyone a chance. All right. Seeing no one else, ma'am, you wish to speak?
I apologize. My name is Philana Miles, and I live in the Turnagain area. I've been there for about 5 years now. I received no notice of any of this, and all that was on the notice near the Rustic Goat was the ordinance number, which surprised me that the municipality is able to get away with that. I work for the state, and I have worked as a land use planner and been in charge of public noticing and the requirements that go out and the amount of people and in the general radius. And I was surprised that this was only 500 feet that you had to notify. And it was Sunday before I was notified, and that was because we happened to be walking our daughters, who are 2 and 4, and we literally have started keeping on leashes when we walk them in our neighborhood now, because there is so much traffic, not just on Turnagain, but also on Barber Street, because the people come around and they whip down 32nd Street, they whip around our street. Like I said, we live on 32nd and Barbara. So I have no solutions or alternative options for you right now because I was not notified, nor had I ever received at our house any notification of any of the Turnagain Community Council meetings. So no, I did not attend, although I do have a background in planning. So I do think I might have been beneficial, because as soon as I saw that they were putting those 2 buildings in one parking lot, I laughed. I was like, you know what's going to happen next is the city's just going to roll over and give those guys the green belt across the street for parking. That's, I just looked at it and I just shook my head. And sure enough, that's what's happening. And I am surprised that the municipality is able to get away with such arbitrary and capricious actions as waiving the zoning and planning for this. It just really shocked me. I mean, because like I said, in working for the state, we must be held to a much higher standard than the municipality. That's all I have to say about that, because we got taken to the ringer and we get sued all the time if we do anything remotely out of line. Meanwhile, the municipality says, oh, by the way, because somebody put in a nice little bistro in a residential area, now we have to accommodate the parking for the BMWs and the Mercedes-Benz from the hillside. And it really is just a joke. And I don't think any one of you would like to see the kids waiting for the buses on Turnagain in the morning as well. It's not just in the evenings or anything. They're waiting for these school buses, and they're standing out in the road. And yes, I agree there needs to be parking, but like the gentleman before me said, that's the owner's responsibility. This was a pilot program, and we have to learn from it. And we've learned we've made a mistake, and we should not do this without proper planning, which we obviously did not do. And if we're waiving things, issues that come up, so we can just do ad hoc, arbitrary, and capricious measures, then that's not allowing public input either. So I am opposed to this parking lot. I would support the gentleman using his own capital funding and not getting a nice low lease rate for a parking lot from the municipality, using his own money and buying a building next door or taking down the ugly structure he has in his parking lot and putting in more parking there to suit his customers.
Ms. Miles, there's a question for you. Ms. Dombowski?
I appreciate your background, and I had some of the same concerns that you had when I saw waiving P&Z. And I'd like to point out it's not arbitrary and capricious. That's a very technical legal term. There's an administrative portion, and that's the portion that the administration is saying that we can issue a lease. But I had the same concern as you, so I hear what you're saying. But what I wanted to say was I think it would be very beneficial to use your skill set and obviously communication skills to hook up with the Turnagain Community Council. So I would recommend that everybody here Google, and in a different way, the Federation of Community Councils. So they have a website, and they will send you out all these public notices. But also, you have a fantastic resource here in Mr. Wortman and Ms. Gleason, who can hook you up with the Community Council's email blasts, so you guys can be in the loop. So I would say, everybody here, the first thing I would do is sign up for the FCC send-out.
Now, the one thing, since I live in the neighborhood but was given no notice of this, like I said, I had no time to prepare any kind of alternatives. And the one thing that we tend to do in the state is include alternatives. And here's the other things we considered. And obviously, nothing else has been considered. Nothing else has been presented by either the owner, myself included, because, like I said, I did not even know about this before Sunday. So is there any chance the Assembly might consider postponing this decision for a couple of weeks to give the public a little bit more time, the residential people a little more time to come up with some other options to present?
Mr. Chair, if I may, I would just like to say that's probably going to be an item for debate. So if you just kind of hang on, this will be something you're going to see us hash out right here.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Ms. Miles.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there anybody else who wishes to speak to us in this matter? All right, seeing and hearing no one, public hearing is now closed. What's the wish of the body? Mr. Hall.
I'm going to make...
We need a motion first, I think.
I'm making a motion to approve.
Okay, could you press your button, please, sir?
Push your button.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Dombowski. Mr. Hall.
Yes. Well, I suppose the place that I should start is by extending an apology to Mrs. Foss about not following up, but I've been working this problem ever since you and I had the discussion, as I told you that I would do. I immediately met with the city manager. He immediately put traffic on this. I mean, we've looked at every possibility here in traffic enforcement, parking enforcement. It's an issue, and it's an issue all through this community. We have the same problem over with the Beartooth, where we got a business that went in and is unbelievably successful. And what we found over there is over a period of time, they have bought up a lot of property around them and to provide parking, but they still have more customers than they can accommodate. But I think a couple of things that I really have to address here, and I may end up getting booed the way some other people have, but everybody needs to understand, you keep using the term poorly planned. This project, the first thing that Mr. Brooks did was he called that community council. And I met with them on the lot. He discussed what he was thinking about doing. He had looked at the development plan for that area and the West Side District Plan. It absolutely indicated that there was to be business in those areas. He did his homework. He worked this thing for, 18 months, 2 years, going through P&Z, getting the approvals. If you want to call it poorly planned, this wasn't one of them. What we did not have the foresight to see was what the success of this place would be. And I think what you will also see, and I'm sure that the managers and Colati Brothers don't really want to see this happen, but I think it's a phenomenon that we see a lot of time that occur in the community where something opens, and they did a remarkable job. The interior of this building is outstanding. The exterior is phenomenal. It really looks nice. It looks great sitting there. But the success, we're going to have to see where it's at a year from now or 18 months from now as people get to the point where, the newness of it wears off. I also want to make very clear, I support the parking lot. I think we've got a big problem there. I think we got to address the traffic on the street. We got to address signage. I have no idea what's going to happen when Turnagain is developed, because we'll be back here again hearing exactly the same thing, because when we go through and build Turnagain to current street codes and we do the sidewalks on both sides, a lot of people are going to lose a lot of their front yards in order to be able to do it. So very major issue coming up in the future when those develops occur, but it's all over our community. Turnagain is one of the oldest communities that we've got here. And at the time that those subdivisions were developed, they were developed as city code at the time. But we moved a long way since that time. I understand everybody loves green space. I have been on the Anchorage Park Foundation from inception. I've been a member. I contribute to it every year. I believe in our parks. But I also believe that you can have the greatest city in the world with the greatest parks, but if you don't accommodate the people and parking and to create the jobs that it takes for people to live in that community, nobody's going to live there, because you got to be able to do it. This place come in and created some great jobs in the community. I think we're going to have to deal with signage on the streets, address whether there's parking on a single side. But I think moving 29 cars off the street into a parking lot is going to be a big step in the right direction, because if you move everybody to one side, they've got to go someplace. I'm sorry, sir. I'm honestly not debating with you. I'm just stating the fact that they followed process. They did this the right way. They went through planning and zoning. They went through the planning department. They came to the assembly. Everybody looked at this. They liked the idea of multi-use. This area had been identified as one for that. So, and I want to share with my fellow members on the body, Ms. Dembowski and others that weren't here, this followed the process. This was not poorly planned. But nobody had any way of foreseeing the fact that it was going to be phenomenally successful. And I think that's what every business wants to accomplish when they open. So, I'm hoping that the body will support us in creating the parking lot. I think we're going to have to work with the administration and planning in regards to the alley. I think that's a very valid discussion. But I like the fact that, they've shown a parking lot here. They're going to foot the cost of development. They're going to pay to lease the land. They're going to landscape it. They're creating a path here that brings people down to the corner of Turnagain and Northern Lights to the crosswalk to get them to the other side. There's nothing that anybody can do about people that choose to cross the street any place it strikes their fancy. All a business can do is try to create a venue that takes them to the right place to cross the street. So, I compliment Mr. Brooks on doing a great job on the development. I think it looks good. Whether the success will continue in perpetuity the way it is today or not, I don't know. I know that everybody pictured that as a walking destination. The community would go in there and patronize. Unfortunately, at this point in time, the entire community of Anchorage knows about it and are patronizing it. So it's creating a problem for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Mr. Steele.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was not involved in the planning on this at the beginning, and but I've heard it was a complete planning process. It is a new concept. The neighborhood had issues before it had the rustic goat. The streets are incredibly narrow, especially the cross streets, 29th, 30th, those streets. When you get in the wintertime and you get everybody's snow stacked up and you have a few cars parked in there, it's tough to weave your way through those streets, and I understand that. We have a problem, and we need to do our best to find solutions. The Greenbelt is fantastic. It was, the land was not zoned park, it was zoned residential. And to put a lot close up there that has 28 spaces in it, without disturbing the mature vegetation that's along the alleyway, without having to relocate all the electrical services along there, which would be expensive because you'd have to underground it, to move the transformers, to connect the houses. This is a good fix to see how it works. It is not, you could change it back. If everything fails and it goes to heck in a handbasket, a little grass seed would help that green belt. But it is somewhat screened from northern lights. But the most important part is that it has proximity to the restaurant, and people will park there and can park there and walk across the street. Turnagain is going to have problems when they start upgrading it, as Mr. Hall said. It's going to be interesting in terms of how much right-of-way. Do they put a sidewalk on one side or not? And I know there are places in town where they're taking property in order to do those upgrades. Well, just down the street on 35th, for example. The neighborhood's getting an uplift, an upgrade, and I hope that this attempt to for the owner to build a parking lot and lease the land from the city. I hope it works. I hope they do continue to work with their neighbors in terms of picking up parking or picking up parcels, because parking is an issue. And hopefully we'll solve these problems. I am desperately concerned about pedestrians, kids going to school and that kind of thing in that neighborhood. And I know it was a problem before, and it's just aggravated now with all the traffic and parking and visibility issues. Let's just keep working on it, and hopefully this is a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Steele. Ms. Domboski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief. As I said, when I first saw this, I was concerned about the process, and but the one thing that's most important to me is the safety of the community. It is clear this is a business that has become incredibly successful, and I think it's because of people like me who've been saying, yeah, I've heard about that, I want to go see it, from all over the community, and you guys are getting that, and you're taking the brunt of it because you live there. I'm hopeful that it'll teeter off, but almost every person that testified about the safety of this area, fearful that they're going to get hit when they pull out, fearful that kids are going to get hit or people that are going to get hit when they cross the street. And that has led me to my position, which is I will absolutely support the parking lot because safety is the most important. Safety is above everything else. We cannot have someone, and I can't in good conscience, do nothing. Because if somebody gets hit, in the next month, because we didn't allow them to have additional parking, I can't live with myself. So I hope this will help your community. I support those other options where you're talking about people not parking along the street, so when you pull out, you can see. I think that is incredibly important. I hope the city manager works with the departments to follow up on that, because there's nothing scarier than having to creep out and then you see a big truck coming right at you. I hear you. And I hope, I recognize this isn't the solution that everybody wants to see, but I hope you recognize that assembly members from all across Anchorage are really trying to keep your community safe. This is a scary situation, just the stories I've heard tonight. So, Mr. Chairman, members from West Anchorage, I will support this because I think it will help with a safety issue in your community. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Domboski. Mr. Trainee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I appreciate my friends from West Anchorage. I won't be supporting you on this one. When I take a look at 2011 93S as passed by this body, I was reading some language in this document that created the B1A district. It says the B1A district is intended to provide convenience business uses which serve the daily needs of nearby neighborhoods. What we're doing is creating the needs of nearby all of Assembly getting in there by creating 28 more parking lots. That was the purpose of this. When you look further on to 11, parking. Adequate off-street parking shall be provided in connection with any permitted land use, subject to the provisions of the supplementary district regulations. The problem is I want to send this thing back to planning and zoning. When I was there a couple days ago, going through the neighborhood, and that place is jammed. In the middle of the day, you can't get down the streets. There are people parked everywhere. And this 28, I appreciate what they're saying, this will stop people, but people jaywalk all the time. Go down to City Hall, walk out City Hall, look across the PAC. You've got places to cross on both sides and people going right through the middle of the street. People don't care where you're supposed to walk at. They go where it's the fastest and most convenient to them. And I don't see this being that. If they want to bring this back to us after this Turnagain Road is developed, I'm more than happy to look at them, but I'm not willing to do this now. I want to see this go off to planning and zoning. So I'll be a no vote on this thing, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Trainee. Mr. Hahnemann.
For me? Yep. Thank you. I'm familiar with I haven't been in the Rusted Goat yet. I likely will. And I was there when Moose's Tooth first started up from the old iteration of a previous restaurant, and should have invested then also, because who'd have known it would have taken off and done as well. I'm familiar with the streets as a CSO, as a police officer. I worked there many years, and I know that that alley itself has other options besides just the parking lot. And that's why I asked Mr. Brooks pointedly, are there other options out here besides just the parking lot? And I didn't hear that there was anything considered other than that. So I, too, would like to see a planning and zoning review and have them, ring back in with potential options here for discussion, if that's something that they would take in their bailiwick. Otherwise, we could look at from the community's perspective and see something has to be done, clearly. I laud the fact that Mr. Brooks' business is doing as well, and I'd like to continue to see other businesses thrive as well. But we do need to be mindful. Mr. Johnson was talking about Title 21 earlier. Look at all the neighborhoods Mr. Ernie had talked about. We just recently are undergoing Pioneer Drive upgrade, East 32nd. These are neighborhoods and streets that were built 20, 25 years ago without any forethought of, they're basically collector streets without any forethought of people safely walking and traversing or even driving down, because they are fairly substandard and narrow. You cannot park. The gentleman talked about the neighborhood, the fourplex, where the people are parking into the shoulder of the easement. It's illegal now, and it's illegal then, and it should be called in, and somebody should do something about it, whether it's code enforcement or the police department. So that's the problem. We put so many of these things in effect, laws-wise and regulations and codes, and yet we don't staff our enforcement branch enough to adequately respond to the calls and take the appropriate action. So, I'd like to move that we postpone this until another month and give the Planning and Zoning Commission, I believe they would meet in time to do that. So I don't know what the date would be that they next meet, but I'd move to postpone this to August 19th.
Will you please press your button, sir? The motion is to postpone this item to August 19. Ms. Gray-Jackson, would you speak to the motion or the underlying?
I just have some comments, Mr.
Would you like
Chairman.
to do that now? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First off, I want to thank everybody in this auditorium for coming out this evening and expressing how you feel about this situation. But if looking at the history, I mean, in the beginning, we got many phone calls and emails about the parking issue, okay, and how bad it was. And then we got a solution to the issue as far as the administration was concerned. That's before us this evening. And then we sat and listened to testimony from all of you, and there were 12 of you who are totally against this parking lot, and then 5 who are in support of it this evening, and then 17 from the community council who are in support of it. So it's a really difficult situation for me, because I like to listen to both sides and then make a decision that I think is the best decision for the community. And another thing that I like to say is I really appreciate the testimony from Vicki Russell, because not only did she talk about how bad the situation is, but she gave us 7 suggestions on how to solve it. So what I'm saying is I agree to some extent with Mr. Honan and Mr. Trainee to not necessarily send it back to the Planning and Zoning Commission, but to give us a little bit more time to not throw away the suggestion of the parking lot, but to give us a little more time to maybe talk about the parking lot and talk about some of the suggestions that Ms. Russell gave to us in black and white, because they're really, really good ones, and we need to consider those along with the parking lot. And so with that said, Mr. Chairman, I'm in support of postponing this at least for 2 weeks to give us a little bit of time to come up with some more ideas in addition to what's before us this evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Gray-Jackson. And Mr. Honan, I need to ask you to amend your motion. We actually canceled the August 19 meeting and replaced it with a meeting on August 26. Could you amend your motion, please?
Earlier or later?
Later, to August 26. Please.
Postponed to August 26.
And is that okay with you, Mr. Trainee? Very good. All right, Mr. Peterson on the motion.
August 5th.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also think it's a good idea to postpone the vote on this. I would like to see a more comprehensive approach to planning and to the traffic flow and parking. And I agree with many of the things that the people who live in the neighborhood said. I've been down Turnagain Street many times, and I've been there when cars were parked on both sides of the street, and it is really narrow. So there is definitely a public safety problem there, and there definitely could be accidents, serious accidents in the future if we're not careful. So I do think we need to consider stopping people from parking at least on one side of Turnagain, and these are the type of things that need to be considered in a more comprehensive approach to solving this problem. I congratulate the owner and the developer of this restaurant. It's fantastic when you have a vision and it comes to fruition and you hit it out of the ballpark. That's an amazing thing. And as a former restaurateur, these are what we consider good problems. The bad problem is if you open the door and nobody walks in.
Yeah.
So I think as a community, if we all come together and work together, we can find a solution, and no one will be completely satisfied, but everyone will get something that they want, and that's usually the way it works in the political game. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Mr. Weaver, before we continue, could you just tell me, when is our next Planning and Zoning Commission meeting? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
I have you next. I have Mr. Dembowski and then you, Mr. Honan. Is that okay? Oh, you want to amend your motion?
That being said, I'm looking to make sure. Yeah. So the meeting of August 5th would be sufficient. It would meet that objective.
Okay. Is that okay with you, Mr. Trainee? Is that all you have, Mr. Honan?
That's it.
Thank you. Ms. Dembowski. It's not August 5.
And you, Mr. Honeman, you amended that to August 5th with still a referral to Planning and Zoning?
August 4th is their meeting. August 5th is our meeting.
Okay. This morning I probably would have gone with you on that, but after seeing how dangerous the situation is, to be quite frank, you're still going to have the same number of cars in the same small area with very few limited places where you can put them. So, I think, as Ms. Gray-Jackson eloquently pointed out, we have a lot of out-of-the-box solutions here that could complement the problem, because I don't think one solution like the parking lot is going to be the only fix. I think the owners are going to have to be creative to encourage people to try to walk if they live there, whatever. But with that said, like I said, I don't see, I hear what Mr. Trainey's saying. The fact of the matter is you have a very successful business with very few opportunities of places to park. And this solution brought forth by the members of West Anchorage, the mayor, whomever collaborated to come up with it, I think is going to be one critical piece in solving that. So I'm not going to vote for a delay just because common sense tells me this has to be part of the equation. I can't live with myself if somebody gets hurt because we didn't act. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Domboski. Mr. Steele.
Yes, I appreciate the discussion. We have literally been working on this since they opened their doors, and it was identified that it's a problem. And the parking lot is not going to solve the problem, but it will contribute 28 parking spaces. And postponing it for the planning and zoning to look at it, they're not going to understand the background, I suspect. They're not going to have heard the testimony, the phone calls, the emails. There are problems there, and this will help it. But there were problems there before. Narrow streets and traffic and no parking and, there were problems. It was manageable because people were used to it. This just adds another dimension. I agree with Ms. Domboski, and I think it's a level-headed suggestion because I think this parking is a part of the fix. And then enforcement and signs and redeveloping Turnagain Street and things like that are part of it as well. But we need to get on with it. If we postpone it for a month, that's a month more of potential damage and or injury. And I would encourage, I applaud the owner for the work that he has done in trying to find solutions to it. I would encourage him to continue to do so because if he can get parking agreements with people, if the restaurant can provide a discount or stamps or coupons or something for people who walk and or come by other means, that would be something maybe. But it's a multi-faceted solution that we're going to need, and this is part of it. And so I don't think a postponement is going to be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Steele. Mr. Hall.
Yes, very briefly. As Mr. Steele stated, we have been working this since it opened, and we knew the parking issue was there. And Mr. Vacalis has been spending a lot of time looking at options there. I mean, they literally looked at everything that was feasible, and this seems to be the most logical plan to be a beginning of a step in the right direction. So I will be a no vote on postponing.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Ms. Gray-Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no issue postponing it, but my issue is sending it to the Planning and Zoning Commission. I just don't think that that's something we need to do. We're a governing body, and we make the law, and I appreciate Mr. Steele's comments. I just don't think that it's a good idea for us to not underestimating the quality of the work that the Planning and Zoning Commission do, but we don't need to go that route, in my opinion. I have no problem postponing it, and as I said earlier, I want to postpone it so that we can work up a document where we implement some of these suggestions from Ms. Russell, once again, and maybe other suggestions. But I would support the postponement, but I really don't want to see it have to go back to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And who's to guarantee that we'll even get on the agenda on the meeting in August 1st or whenever it was? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Gray Jackson. Ms. Johnston.
I have a question for planning. First of all, if it went to the Planning and Zoning Commission, do you know at this point what the staff recommendation would be?
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Johnson, it'd basically be the same application that you had before you. We brought it for you directly because time is of the essence with respect to the need for the parking. There really would be probably insufficient time to take it to the commission at that first meeting on Monday in August. So.
And is this project shovel ready at this point? Do you know? Or
Mr. Chair, Ms. Johnson, we've worked with the applicant considerably and they're ready to get moving.
Okay, thank you. I'm feeling a little bit like I'm channeling Miss Osiander right now. Because I do believe in the process. I see the crisis of safety. I do think this has had a full-fledged vetting as far as the administration with traffic and with planning, and other times when we've had situations, I've felt there's been a bureaucracy where the brakes have been on full blast. This seems to be one that has had a concurrence amongst many different aspects. So where I did encourage Mr. Hahnemann to at least not delay it to the end of August, I think probably I'm going to have to go with the assembly people from that district because it is their district. And if it is ready to go and if it does meet the safety needs, I'm going to be a no vote.
Thank you, Ms. Johnston. Mr. Traney?
Mr. Weaver, got a question for you. Do you really think this rustic goat with this extended parking lot is consistent with what we envisioned with B1A designation?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Flynn, Traney, it's a complicated question. B1A was primarily meant for neighborhood commercial. The mixed-use district that you approved was for neighborhood commercial. The applicant's goal was to make this oriented in that direction, but it's like it was put together so well with the right operators and the right products that it's become a moose's tooth and a bear-tooth situation, that it's a bit more than what was originally envisioned for the site.
Then are we going to be able to put this has become in context with the vision of Turnagain? I mean, we're planning to develop Turnagain, or at least improve it. Are we looking at what this business does to Turnagain?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Trey, I think it can be complementary because I've talked to Public Works with respect to the improvements to Turnagain. I believe it has to go through the context-sensitive design process, but I believe there are going to be pedestrian improvements on both sides of that facility, and I'm going to inquire about that tomorrow, but that's my understanding.
Will you let me know when you find out?
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver.
See no one else in queue. The motion before the body is to postpone this item to August 5. Please proceed to vote. So by a vote of 5 yeas and 6 nays, that motion fails. We now have the original motion before us. I see no one else in queue. Please, Mr. Traney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. George, question for you. Can you make sure that we put signage, if this passes, up along the access and near this parking lot if it's approved, so we let people know that there's no parking on the road itself? I'm just concerned that we don't have the signage up, and I want to make sure that we have signage there that this is not the area to walk across the street to get into the Rusty Goat. You'd have to go on down to the other way to get in. Can you take care of that, sir?
Yes, sir. What I will do, just so that you know, I'll get with the traffic engineer. We'll take a look at what the proper signage would be to make it safe there as a result of the design of the parking lot and the walkway to it. And it could be that it would be caution signs regarding pedestrian traffic. It could be no parking signs. But whatever, in conjunction with the traffic engineer, that's developed that would be the safest for the pedestrians in that area, I think that's what we would do, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Vacalis. When you figure it out, would you let this body know? Because we're going to have eventually get calls from people. We want to be able to tell them these are the steps we took as a city to make sure it's safe as we can make it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Vacalis.
Thank you, Mr. Traney. Mr. Honeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I see where the prevailing thought is to go ahead and get this so that this parking available so that we can try to relieve congestion. And I want to not to be snarky or not to be, I think everybody knows my background and my current profession. If you're talking public safety and the interest of safety of persons, I've not only talked the talk, I walk the walk. So the concerns about traffic and the concerns about the public walking across, kids in and out of the streets, Mr. Steele is accurate when he says there were problems with narrow streets and no sidewalks. That alley that, the irony here is the alley that would be the access to this parking lot is an unimproved, dirt, very narrow, substandard and subwidth roadway or travel way. And so there is no sidewalk. It'll have to be put in, and it'll likely be more inside the parking lot than towards the roadway. I still believe that there are other alternatives. I suspect that that's what we'll have to do because this is just one of many things that will need to be done. I'm not to be punitive to Rustic. Go to the ownership there. It is not my intent. My intent was to look at other solutions, and I see one. I just see no other options, and I ask that of everybody pretty much. So it's pretty consistent. So, you know, I too am concerned about parking. I was on the body. We approved the uniqueness to this business. I was one of those that approved it. I thought it was a pretty good idea as a coffee shop. And who'd have known that, like the Moose's Tooth, like the Bear Tooth, that your business would be promoted. I've seen several reviews, and they're all pretty good raves about Rustic Goat. So I ask you to be a good neighbor. I hear some of the neighbors here kind of a negatively booing and heckling and such. It's sad to see because really a good neighbor, a good community, business community is vital to good neighbors and good neighborhoods. So I ask you to continue to try to be good neighbors, to make sure you put your notices up, your employees to park wherever they can to try to alleviate the problem, not be part of the problem. And I ask you put something up to the customers to say, hey, our parking is over here. If there's not there, park a ways off, find an alternative way. I mean, don't add to the problem. I ask that of you, all I can do. Because, as you know, there are people are going to do what they're going to do. So.
Thank you, Mr. Hahn. Mr. Steele.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I know I've already spoken, but I did want to mention to Mr. Vacalis also that hopefully when you go out with the traffic engineers that you talk also about no parking setbacks from those cross streets now so that the people coming in and out of there don't have to worry about the visibility.
Thank you, Mr. Steele. Ms. Gray-Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may, Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask the administration to at least look at number 1 and 2 of the suggestions from Ms. Russell, because I think they're really good ones and possibly ones that you could implement. So I really would appreciate it if you would at least see if they can be done, because they just make sense since we are going to go forward with this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Gray-Jackson. I see no one else in queue. Please proceed to vote. So by a vote of 9-2, that motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, I move for immediate reconsideration and urge a no vote.
Okay, do you let's see, do you have your button up? I'm trying to, there you go. It's been moved and seconded. Please proceed to vote. So by a vote of 9-1, that motion fails. That brings us to audience participation. If there's anybody who wishes to speak to us about a matter that was not on our agenda this evening, now is your time. Mr. Oliva, welcome.
Yes, my name is Ron Oliva. I wish I was from Turnagain. I just really impressed there how they got response from this assembly. I'm here tonight because a 2-year report is due. Mr. Starr, who was on planning and zoning, made it a request, part of the Brother Francis Shelter's conditional use. They have to report every 2 years. They missed 7 years. They were called on the carpet, made a report that was so misleading, I sued them. I plan and intend to do the same thing. Things have gotten worse than any communication or changes to make it safer, healthier, more quiet and enjoyment, and the economic interference caused by the overflow includes 2 car thefts out of 4 days over the weekend. It was just, they kick them out there, where do they go? Now, this is a big problem, but I offered my property to the city because I think ML&P can buy it through a tariff, and then you can make it Bindlestick Park. The overflow, when they kick them out, they can camp on my property. I have 3 acres there. You've ruined it to the point of inverse condemnation by your decisions granting a conditional use, changing it from heavy industrial, and who would ever believe you would overpopulate a homeless shelter to the point that they would be required to put up a fence to protect a heavy industrial lot. Now that's how bad it's got. Now, the executive director is going to go before the planning and zoning, which has no authority to enter into an agreement of understanding or an agreement of a memorandum of agreement. It's not allowed. It's as simple as that. Like you said, you're the governing body. They cannot change any of the conditions to the conditional use. You can. You can require a security guard financed by the Bishop's Attic Catholic organization, takes $300,000 a year profit out of Fairview. They can get their own medic. They can pay for that, get an EMT3, and they can hire a waste management company. I invite any and all of you to come down and tour that area and tell me if it isn't a wasteland, and I can no longer be there safely. I have now armed myself, not only with a shotgun, not only with a pistol, but I have other methods of the violence that occurs there. And when you catch someone stealing something, you have to be real cautious, because the last time I was here, I told you Robert Workman was my employee. Him and his girlfriend were shot. I really like to thank the Anchorage Police Department. I did thank Mark Mule. The bottom line is to recover, to even question our police officers to go check on this attractive nuisance caused by warm and fuzzies, thinks they can control it. You can't put those officers at risk. You can't put me at risk. I'm requesting you buy me out, and that's a resolve. If not, there's going to be more legal action. I'm going to tie up the city. I love Mr. Wheeler over there. He's bright. He'll like the challenge. But I'm not going to settle for $30,000. I'm not going to settle for $300,000. You're going to buy me out and pay me fair market value, because your decisions to continue to not hold them accountable has caused economic damage and put myself, my clients, my family, my employees at risk. I will not tolerate it. I will be back. Does anyone have any questions?
I don't see any, Mr. Leba. Thank you.
We'll see you again. Mr. Wheeler, the gauntlet has been thrown.
Welcome back, Mr. Harrington.
Yeah, William Harrington, Harrington. I was going to speak on the same issue, but from a different angle, and that is, when I drive by down there, he's 100% right. It's a war zone, and you kind of wonder, well, when did these guys get out of prison, last week or the week before? It's, it's just plain unsafe. However, right next to that property is the old Native Hospital, big, flat piece of ground, all cleared off, and perhaps the city, while they're in the fight with him, could lease that property from the federal government for $1 a year until Cabata finally builds the bridge to somewhere, and put up, Anchorage prides itself as a tent city. It got its start as a tent city. So having a safe, it's got a fence around it, a place where a policeman could patrol it and have a medic, a place where there could bring some civility to the people who are, and don't, remember this, there but for fortune go you or I. So I have a lot of empathy. At the same time, I want to keep a pretty arm's length. But that property, the hotel, the former hospital would be a solution. I think Mr. Avila is right, is that he needs to get the hell out of the neighborhood, and somebody needs to buy him out. And just like I mentioned before about the other solution, if you're Mark Zuckerberg or Google, you just buy the neighborhood. And if the dominant player in that neighborhood is going to be the homeless shelter, then rent the hospital grounds for one and buy him out for another. That won't solve the homeless problems, but at least you can get people in tents and you can deal with what appears to be a constantly increasing population. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harrington.
Oh, by the way, I wish Mr. Avila all the Godspeed, and I can only quote a former lawyer friend of mine who had a bumper sticker on his car that says, "My lawyer can beat up your lawyer."
Very good. All right. Seeing nobody else, may I please have a...
Second.
We are adjourned. Thank you.